Part 55. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Len. Chapter 542. At this moment, storms gathered in Qingxi city, and all the powerful monks from the entire Qingxi city arrived. They gathered on the square in front of the tower. In addition to the original city lord of Bluestone City, there are also some top powerhouses, such as the Valley Lord of Danyang Valley, the Palace Lord of Golden Knife Palace, and some elders of big families. Without exception, these people are all here to visit Qingtian Temple, or powerful men affiliated with Qingtian Temple. They looked up at the sky, chatting and looking forward to the appearance of Qingtian Temple. Who is this great Qin dynasty that can summon so many powerful people? Who knows, maybe he is an enemy of Qingtian Temple. But to be able to summon so many powerful people, I'm afraid he is not a simple person. He might be the leader of a certain transcendent force. Humph, they picked a good time. Now the head of Qingtian Temple is not in the sect, and Daizai has brought the elders to the Wanzhong Mountain to participate in the celebration. Now is the time when Qingtian Temple is weak. No, you are wrong if you think so. Although the head of Qingtian Temple and Daizai are not in the sect, there are still several supreme elders and ancestors sitting in the section together. They can sweep away any force. This is true. Qingtian Temple has a powerful foundation, which is far beyond the comparison of ordinary sections. I heard that there are 3 quasi-emperor ancestors in Qingtian Temple. Their strength is unfathomable. If they are in charge, other forces will not be able to gain any advantage even if they attack. That's right, Qingtian Temple has 3 powerful quasi-emperors sitting in charge, so how can it be the turn of other forces to bully Qingtian Temple? On the square, the major families and powerful people were talking about it. When they mentioned Qingtian Temple, their faces were full of reverence and respect. After all, this is a behemoth that has been passed down for tens of thousands of years, and its heritage is immeasurably deep. In the square, many discussions spread everywhere. At this moment, a vague and distant chime of bells resounded throughout the entire Bluestone City. The chime of the bell was like the sound of a fairy, echoing in the sky, causing the square to become silent for an instant. Immediately, a loud voice came from the sky. According to His Majesty's decree, the Qingtian Temple will be destroyed. Anyone who tries to protect them will be killed without mercy. Aha! In an instant, a dazzling golden divine sword emerged, releasing a dazzling brilliance that shot straight into the sky and penetrated the void, covering the entire Bluestone City in a dazzling curtain of light. Each divine sword is several feet wide and huge. It is golden and extremely sharp, like a golden divine dragon entrenched in the void. The divine swords were densely packed, covering the sky, and the vast and majestic aura swept across the entire city, making people feel terrified. Just the sharp edge of these divine swords made the entire Bluestone City tremble, and countless buildings were cut into ruins. So scary, is this a holy soldier? In the square, many monks with lower cultivation levels were trembling and their faces were pale. They could only feel the terrifying sharp edges raging in the surrounding sky, making their hair stand on end. Buzz! A divine sword vibrated violently, exuding a fierce and ferocious aura, as if it was choosing people to devour. They hang in the sky, and the terrible aura they exude is suffocating and despairing. Among the many divine sword packages, strong men came from afar, each one filled with overwhelming evil aura. Lin Qingyu's expression changed slightly. He looked at Lu Menger and others and whispered, "The situation seems to be wrong. Let's leave here first." Lu Menger frowned and said, "This is Qingtian Temple, do they really dare to attack Qingtian Temple?" Lin Qingyu looked solemn, "Whether they dare or not, this is not the place we should stay. I always feel that things are not that simple, and a great war may break out here." When Lu Menger heard this, she fell silent immediately and said with some hesitation, but this is a very good opportunity. If we are always on the same side as King Tianguan, it should be easier to join them after this incident. Hearing this, Lin Qingyu was also slightly stunned. This sentence is absolutely correct. If you can take this opportunity to join Qing Tianguan, it will indeed be easier to get the protection of Qing Tianguan in the future. Only, can Qingtian Temple withstand this wave of invasion? Although Qingtian Temple has a profound foundation, the scale of this invasion is too great. Once the two sides fight, it's really hard to say who will win. After hesitating for a while, Lin Qingyu still insisted on his original idea and said, "I think it's more important to save your life. Let's leave first. It won't be too late to join if we have the opportunity in the future. If you want to leave, you can go. I won't leave. And no one else has left. If we were the only ones leaving, wouldn't it be embarrassing?" At this time, the young man in white waved his hand and said very stubbornly. Lin Qingyu was stunned when he heard the other party's words. He looked at the boy in white, then turned to look at Lu Menger, and sighed when he saw that she seemed to have no intention of leaving. "Okay, in that case, I'll leave first. You guys wait for me here." Anyway, he persuaded her, and he also explained the stakes involved. Whether the other party leaves or not is the other party's business. There is no need for him to take advantage of him for the other party's sake. Just when Lin Qingyu was about to turn around and leave, the girl in green suddenly raised her hand and whispered, "Brother Qingyu, I'll go with you." Lin Qingyu paused, turned his head and looked, then nodded, "Okay." Then, he looked at Lu Menger and others and reminded them, Be careful." Leaving a word, Lin Qingyu turned around and flew out with the green-clothed girl, heading into the distance. Soon, the two disappeared over Qingxi City. Watching Lin Qingyu leave, the white-clothed boy's mouth drew a hint of sarcasm. He shook his head, chuckled and said, "Tisk, what a coward. Why do I feel that he is a little weird? Is it because of the topic just now?" Next to him, another boy frowned and asked in confusion. The young man in white pursed his lips and snorted lightly, "What's weird? It's just cowardice." As he said that, he looked at Lu Menger and others and said, "Sister Menger, let's go directly to the tower to sign up to join Qingtian Temple and express our willingness to fight against foreign enemies with them. I believe we can join smoothly, and maybe we don't even need to take the assessment." As he said that, he showed a look of longing. Qingtian Temple is one of the 4 holy places of the human race. Once you join it, your future will definitely be extremely bright. And if you can join it, it will be more convenient to travel in Deoxuan domain in the future. Hearing this, several people looked at each other and nodded in agreement. Lu Menger looked at the divine swords hanging in the void, and a trace of worry appeared in her beautiful eyes. Suddenly, she doubted whether her decision was correct. At this moment, it was time to make a decision. If you hesitate, you will not be able to please both sides. Lu Menger looked at the expressions of the people around her again and found that they were all calm and not afraid at all. She gritted her teeth and decided to take this gamble. If she wins, her future will be bright. If she loses, she believes that she can turn the tide with her beauty. Thinking of this, she immediately said, "Okay, let's go to the tower. Let's leave quickly, lest there be any changes if we are late." Lu Menger's eyes flashed, and she immediately led everyone to the location of the tower. Boom! Above the square, thunder exploded, lightning rushed, and the wind whistled, breaking up the endless clouds and making the sky and the earth dark. At the same time, on all sides of the square, a number of divine ships stretched across the sky, emitting a blazing brilliance, like a group of black demons, and the atmosphere was gloomy. On the divine ships, there were densely packed figures. They exuded amazing momentum, and each of them was murderous and extremely cold. Behind these people, all kinds of treasures, talismans, elixirs, and even formation flags and spiritual armor were suspended in the void. It seemed that only one order was needed, and the entire Qingxi city would be completely destroyed and turned into ruins. This scene made everyone tremble with fear. At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared in the sky, and then 5 old men in green robes appeared out of thin air. With their appearance, the vitality of heaven and earth surged wildly, and an indescribable terrifying pressure spread, covering an area of hundreds of feet. Powerful, unparalleled power. The pressure made people feel suffocated. Especially the leading old man, although he looked extremely old, hunched, and weak, he gave people a majestic feeling like a mountain and could not be shaken at all. He just stood there quietly, but gave people an impulse to worship. It's the elders of Qingtian Temple. The elders of Qingtian Temple are here. In an instant, the whole square was boiling, and many people's faces were full of excitement, cheering one after another, as if they had found their backbone. On the other side of the square, the lord of Qingxi city also ran over and kowtowed to the 5 elders with a respectful look. "Greetings, elders." "Stand up." The leading elder raised his hand and said lightly. "Thank you, elders." The lord of Qingxi city stood up hurriedly. Then, he pointed to a huge ship opposite and said, "Elders, please look, these are the thieves who are trying to invade Qingtian Temple and smear Qingtian Temple." "Yes." The 5 elders nodded in unison, and then they looked up at the countless divine swords in the sky, their eyes narrowed, and their faces were extremely solemn. This battle was much more serious than they had imagined. Although the 5 of them were all at the peak of the saints, it was simply a fantasy to want to stop these invaders. But when they thought of the orders they received, a trace of grief and despair appeared on their faces at the same time. The order they received was that even if they risked their lives, they had to protect Qingtian Temple, prevent foreign invasion, and never allow anyone to set foot in Qingtian Temple. "Fellow brothers, since the Supreme Elder has given us a death order, let's execute it." One of the elders took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Brother, don't be so pessimistic. The Supreme Ancestor is going to wake up the Ancestor. We only need to hold on for a moment. When the Supreme Ancestor wakes up from his deep sleep, we will be able to kill the invaders and protect Qingtian Temple for thousands of years." Another elder said. Hearing this, several people breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the ancestor of Qingtian Temple has not fallen, Qingtian Temple will still stand in Daoxuan domain. At this time, the leading old man spoke. His voice was extremely hoarse and full of vicissitudes. "Since you are ready to fight, I will not say more. Remember, you would rather sacrifice us than retreat a single step. Defend Qingtian Temple to the death and fight for Qingtian Temple." "Yes, Elder," everyone shouted in a low voice. The leading old man slowly turned around, put his hands behind his back, looked up at the sky, and said solemnly word by word, "Qingtian Temple disciples, listen to the order." As soon as these words fell, tens of thousands of Qingtian Temple disciples dressed in green all knelt on one knee and shouted in unison, "Disciples are here." The voice was loud and deafening, resounding through the sky. The disciples of Qingtian Temple finally appeared, and they formed a vast army and descended on Qingxi city. Behind these Qingtian Temple disciples, there were more monks riding monsters and rushing over, with arrogance and murderous aura. These monks were warriors from nearby sects or families. After learning of the Qingtian Temple's call, they rushed over and joined the team to resist the invaders. "Disciples of Qingtian Temple, listen to my order. From now on, the mountain gate will be sealed and the Qingtian illusion formation will be deployed. Anyone who trespasses will be killed without mercy." The leading old man said solemnly, "This time, we will use blood and fire to tell the invaders that the dignity of Qingtian Temple cannot be desecrated. Anyone who offends Qingtian Temple, kill." As soon as the voice fell, tens of thousands of Qingtian Temple disciples dressed in green clothes shouted, "Kill!" Their voices were loud and majestic, like a group of war gods, bursting with raging arrogance and sweeping all directions. "Form a formation," the leading old man said sternly. "Shua." As soon as the voice fell, all the disciples rushed up together, occupying an area respectively, forming one small formation after another. Soon, the whole formation was completed. The 5 elders sat cross-legged in the center, with light flashing around them, and amazing fluctuations bursting out of their bodies. The cultivation of the 5 of them has all reached the peak of saints, and they have infinite power when they join tens of thousands of disciples to perform the Qingtian illusion formation. "Kill!" An old man roared, his eyes blazing with brilliance, leading his disciples forward. The void trembled violently, boundless evil spirit filled the air, and the rolling murderous intent covered the sky and the earth, drowning the 4 fields, making people's hearts tremble. Boom! The next moment, the Qingtian illusion formation was activated. The formation was running, and in an instant, the sky shook and the earth shook, the entire square trembled violently, and an invisible ripple quickly spread out, covering the entire Qingxi city in the blink of an eye, and spreading to the distance. Buzz buzz buzz. The void rang softly, as if something was about to break out of the ground. The rules of heaven and earth near Qingxi city changed rapidly, and boundless mist rose, wisps after wisps, covering the void. The scenery of the entire Qingxi city disappeared, replaced by an extremely huge illusion. This illusion seemed to contain some kind of great will, covering the entire world, as if it had turned into a prison, trapping everyone here, including the invading monks. This was an illusion array jointly cast by hundreds of saints and tens of thousands of Qingtian temple disciples, and it was extremely terrifying. It seemed to exist in reality, separated from the outside world by a barrier, difficult to touch, but one could clearly feel the destructive aura transmitted from it. Qin Mu had been watching the scene in the dragon chariot. He did not stop it, nor did he choose to escape, but shook his head and smiled gently. "Do you think that you can sneak away by trapping all the people in the array, and then dividing them into 2 groups to confuse the audience? You think I am a fool? At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 543. Qin Mu smiled slightly, with a strong and playful look in his eyes. "That's good, I can just tell who the enemy is." A cold arc appeared at the corner of his mouth, and then he waved his sleeves and said indifferently, "Let the vanguard army press on first." "Yes," Master Zhang Luoshan responded respectfully beside him. At this time, in a mountain forest about 3,000 kilometers away from Qingtian Temple, a bright light quietly emerged, and then the smooth space was torn apart, and a silver-white warship appeared. The silver-white warship was 20 feet long, with dense runes and inscriptions carved on the surface, flowing with a piercing cold metallic luster, like a work of art made purely of metal. The silver-white warship was engraved with ancient totem patterns, revealing power and mystery, and it was very extraordinary at first glance. Boom! The warship flew out of the space crack and docked between the mountains and forests. On the deck of the silver-white warship, there stood a group of men and women with cold temperaments, each with a strong aura, eyes like stars, and a blazing light all over their bodies. They all wore uniform clothes, with badges with blue runes painted on their chests. These badges are the symbols of the disciples of Qingtian Temple, and only disciples above the inner gate are qualified to wear them. Each of them has a strong aura, with a gleam in their eyes, and exudes a sharp and compelling aura. But the atmosphere between them is filled with a sense of sadness. Because this time they were forced to leave Qingtian Temple, and they didn't even leave from the mountain gate properly, but secretly left using the teleportation array. This made the disciples of Qingtian Temple inexplicably sad and angry, and a strong sense of humiliation filled their hearts. Think about how majestic their Qingtian Temple is. When has it ever been forced? And when has it ever encountered such a situation today? But today, they, the disciples of Qingtian Temple, have actually fallen to the point of secretly running away, which really makes them ashamed. This is a shame that can never be washed away in a lifetime. Alas! How could my Qingtian Temple fall to such a state? Yes. As one of the 4 great holy places of the human race, it has fallen to the point of being bullied by a group of scoundrels. You let me go back, I want to fight the invaders to the death. The disciples of Qingtian Temple discussed a lot, full of anger, and some people could not bear it and shouted hatefully. Humph! I will go back and fight with those ants, I want to see what they are. Yes, I would rather die than surrender and beg for mercy and be a coward. Humph! This is the shame of our generation of cultivators, and it must be washed away. The disciples of Qingtian Temple discussed a lot, expressing their own opinions. Their faces flushed, their eyes were red, and they were full of hatred. At the top of the silver-white warship, stood a burly figure, covered with black armor, with a hideous face and a spear in his hand. He was a magnificent figure, with broad shoulders and bulging muscles like rocks, and his whole body was filled with iron and blood and fierceness. He held a spear in his hand, his eyes were cold, and he scanned the 4 directions like a sword. And he was the outer sect elder of Qingtian Temple. Stop! The man shouted angrily. Although he was an outer sect elder, he was not old, with a tall and majestic body, a deep and terrible aura, and gave people endless pressure, like a towering mountain lying in the void. Elder, we want to go back to the sect. How can we, Qingtian Temple, allow the villains to insult us? Someone said. Humph! When will it be your turn to be a hero in my Qingtian Temple? The outer sect elder snorted coldly, his eyes were like lightning, and he shot at everyone. If you want to die, I can fulfill your wish now. Hearing this, many Qingtian Temple disciples suddenly kept silent, their faces were uncertain, and they were unwilling, but they did not dare to disobey the words of this outer sect elder. They naturally knew that this trip was a life or death journey, and if they were not careful, they would probably die. But they were still indignant, furious, and mad with hatred, thinking that this was a great shame and humiliation that they could not tolerate at all. This matter is of great importance, I don't want you to go back and die. The outer sect elder looked around and said slowly, remember, our mission this time is to protect our own safety. Once there is any change in Qingtian Temple, then we will shoulder the responsibility of revitalizing Qingtian Temple, do you understand? The man shouted coldly, his voice low and full of power, this is the order of the Supreme Elder, you must obey it. The Supreme Elder. As soon as these words came out, all the disciples of Qingtian Temple fell silent, and there was no more debate. But their mood had already fallen to the bottom. Even the Supreme Elder personally issued an order to let them retreat, which means that the enemy encountered by Qingtian Temple this time is probably extremely terrifying, otherwise the Supreme Elder would not be so serious and solemn. But in this way, Qingtian Temple has lost all its face. When they thought of this, they couldn't help but feel emotional, and they wanted to kill back to Qingtian Temple for revenge. Alas! Some people sighed, their eyes dim. I hope the Supreme Elder can repel the foreign enemies as soon as possible and return a bright and clear world to Qingtian Temple. My Qingtian Temple has stood for tens of thousands of years and stood at the top of the human race. It should not be humiliated like this. Some people gritted their teeth, clenched their fists, and their eyes were red. Senior brothers and sisters, I'm sorry, it's all my fault that I failed to protect Qingtian Temple at this time, a younger girl said with red and swollen eyes. Her name is Zhao Lingyuan, one of the core disciples of Qingtian Temple. Although she has only the cultivation level of Yuanshen realm, she is extremely talented and deeply loved by the elders. She is one of the most outstanding core disciples of Qingtian Temple. Junior sister Lingyuan, I don't blame you. Next to Zhao Lingyuan, a pretty woman in a white dress shook her head and smiled gently. When you have achieved success in cultivation in the future, it will not be too late to seek justice for Qingtian Temple. Yes, Zhao Lingyun nodded heavily, her beautiful eyes filled with tears. Senior sister Ye, I will definitely practice well. The senior sister Ye she mentioned is Ye Bufan's sister Ye Xian. She is dressed in white, with a beautiful face, skin like cream, black hair draped over her shoulders, eyebrows and eyes like paintings, skin like snow, and a graceful figure, which can be called perfect. Sister, where are brother Deizai and the others? Zhao Lingyun suddenly asked. Hearing this, the fleet, which was originally very lively, fell silent, and the atmosphere suddenly became dull, and everyone fell silent. Ahem, they. Ye Xian was slightly startled, and a trace of pain flashed in her eyes, but she immediately recovered and squeezed out a smile. Deizai and the others are all fine, don't worry, we can meet them when we return to Qingtian Temple. Oh, Zhao Lingyun nodded, and did not continue to ask. Okay, let's not discuss it anymore. We should continue to set off and try to leave here as soon as possible. Find a hidden place first. Ye Xian waved her jade hand to break the dullness. Let's go. The outer sect elder nodded. Deizai and the others, I believe they are lucky people, and they will definitely be able to turn danger into safety and be safe and sound. The elder is right. Everyone bowed together. Then, they continued their journey and flew away into the distance. This huge warship was speeding in the air, leaving a long rainbow and heading southeast. On this giant warship, there were more than 3,000 Qingtian Temple disciples, including 28 elders, 176 direct disciples, and all the others were inner disciples. Ye Xian stood on the side of the ship, looking at the distant sky, and her peerless fairy face covered with a veil revealed an inexplicable look. No one noticed that her jade hand was gently moving in the air, as if leaving some marks. In Qingxi City. Kill. There was a fierce fighting sound in the Qingtian illusion formation, and the tens of thousands of Qingtian Temple disciples formed a huge formation and charged towards the sky. In an instant, swords and spears were everywhere, cold light raged across the 8 wastelands and 6 directions, and endless strong winds whistled. One treasure after another burst into dazzling brilliance, illuminating the entire sky. Kill. The vanguard monks on the opposite side also roared, their bodies glowing brightly, their killing intent boiling, and they rushed towards the disciples of Qingtian Temple with unparalleled bravery. Kill. The two armies collided with each other in an instant. Dang! 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 The sound of metal clashing shook the heaven and earth, the sound of weapons colliding continued to sound, and countless spiritual powers burst into a blaze of light, setting off waves. Countless spells and spiritual powers collided, splashing brilliant sparks, and every second, several disciples of Qingtian Temple screamed and flew backwards, and the blood stained the earth red. Kill! 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 The disciples of Qingtian Temple attacked frantically, one by one, like crazy, desperately attacking, like a group of angry beasts. Their eyes were red, like a group of killing gods. These were the elite disciples of Qingtian Temple. Among them, there were even many elders, each of whom was as powerful as the master of a small sect outside, not to mention that they were gathered together. This made the cultivators led by Qin Mu a little overwhelmed. After all, these people were just an alliance army formed by ordinary sects. In the face of this level of fighting, compared with the tacit cooperation of Qingtian Temple, they had no tacit understanding at all. In an instant, they suffered heavy losses. Bang! A meteor fell from the sky and smashed a deep pit on the ground. Boom! Accompanied by a thunderous explosion, smoke and dust rolled, the ground cracked, and a terrifying wave spread. A man in a green robe lay in the deep pit, his body twitched a few times, and then he completely lost his life. Seeing this scene, the rest of the cultivators couldn't help but gasp, their cheeks twitched, and they were extremely frightened. In just a moment, 2 Dao-killing cultivators died, and both died at the hands of Qingtian temple disciples. This was beyond imagination. They never thought that the disciples of Qingtian temple were so powerful. They obviously had the advantage in numbers, but they were completely no match for the other side. After several tentative attacks, they were defeated and retreated step by step, with heavy losses. Especially those warriors with higher cultivation, who were surrounded and killed by the elders, core disciples, and elite disciples of Qingtian temple, were even more difficult to resist. And the most important thing is that in the Qingtian illusion formation, their strength was suppressed and they were almost unable to resist. If it weren't for the blessing of numbers, they would probably have suffered heavy casualties. Is this the elite of Qingtian temple? It's really amazing. Damn, these guys are just a bunch of mad dogs. They are really playing with their lives. The remaining monks were pale, trembling with fear, and were full of fear. They did not dare to confront them head-on, and avoided the attack range of the Qingtian temple disciples. Ha ha ha, looking at the monks fleeing in a panic, the Qingtian temple disciples laughed excitedly. They all had cold eyes and murderous intent, like a group of bloodthirsty demons, wishing to tear each other apart and devour them to relieve their hatred. Humph, you ants, you also want to compete with us, you are simply looking for death. Now you know you are afraid, it's too late. Kill them all for me. The Qingtian temple disciples laughed grimly, and they were murderous, like a flood and beast, rushing towards the remaining monks. Seeing this scene, the monks of the vanguard army felt a chill in their backs, their faces became more and more ugly, and a terrifying crisis surged through their bodies. If this goes on, they may all be defeated here. Run, run quickly, a monk screamed and turned to flee. However, at this moment, a team of women in armor suddenly appeared in front of everyone and intercepted the group of monks who were fleeing. This is... The pupils of these monks shrank suddenly. Seeing the outfits of this team of women, they were stunned for a moment, and then their faces changed, and a warning sign rose in their hearts. They knew the origins of these women in armor very well. This group of women was the female army around Qin Mu, the lord of the Great Qin. They were powerful, and each female cultivator had a terrifying combat power above the Dao of slashing. It can be said that they represent the Great Qin dynasty. And now, these women appeared here, which obviously meant something. When they thought of this, everyone's mood sank to the bottom of the valley, and their faces were uncertain. The leader had a graceful figure, white skin, silver-white armor, holding a spear, cold eyes like lightning, and a group of blazing flames surrounded him. It was Zhang Luoshan. Those who flee from the battlefield will be killed without mercy. Kill! She shouted tenderly, and the long spear swept across, shaking the void, bursting with dazzling light. Puff! A big head was thrown high. Kill! The women shouted tenderly, and the long spears in their hands burst into brilliant rays of light, and the sharp edge swept out, instantly piercing through several monks, and the corpses were scattered. The scene was extremely tragic. Puff puff puff. In the blink of an eye, several more monks died and turned into corpses. In a short moment, 6 or 7 monks died, and blood was dripping. Damn, these women are so cruel. These women are simply monsters. The remaining monks were all scared, their faces were pale, and fear appeared in their eyes. They never expected that the Lord of the Great Qin would even kill his own people. If there are any more people who flee from the battlefield, they will be killed, Zhang Luoshan said in a cold voice. His eyes were cold, and there was a murderous intention all over his body. Asshole, everyone gritted their teeth. Qin Mu is targeting us. Because we did not join the Great Qin, he sent us to the front line and used our lives as cannon fodder, a cultivator roared angrily. Hearing this, everyone nodded. He clearly wants to kill someone with a borrowed knife. Too cruel. Everyone was furious, but they could do nothing. Although they had guessed it long ago, they had not confirmed it. Now that they had confirmed it, they were extremely angry and gnashed their teeth. Originally, they wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to gain benefits, but they were calculated instead. This Lord of the Great Qin is really despicable and shameless. It's a pity that our strength is low and we can't stop Qingtian Temple at all. If we can break through the realm and reach the realm of Zhang, maybe we can still fight. Everyone gritted their teeth and cursed secretly, their hearts were filled with unwillingness and resentment. If you say any more nonsense, I will kill you immediately. Zhang Luoshan's eyes were cold and his voice was chilling. The monks gritted their teeth. In desperation, they had to turn around and attack Qingtian Temple again. There was no other way. If they fought head-on, they might be able to survive, but if they fled from the battlefield, they would surely die. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 544. They had no choice. Boom. The two sides fought fiercely, and 3 or 4 monks died tragically in one encounter and turned into corpses. Seeing this scene, the disciples of Qingtian Temple became more and more excited. The fleeing monks became more and more panicked and desperate. No matter what means they used, even the forbidden techniques were useless. Because the deterrent power of the Qingtian illusion formation was too strong, no matter how powerful their moves were, they had little effect, as if they disappeared like a stone sinking into the sea. Unless their power was strong enough, they would never shake this formation. As time passed, they were exhausted from being chased, their spiritual energy was consumed greatly, and their speed dropped sharply. What should we do? Some monks were anxious, their foreheads were covered with sweat, and their faces were pale and bloodless. The other monks were also extremely anxious, but they were more helpless and panicked. Are we going to die here today? No. I don't want to die yet. I'm still young. Everyone cried out in despair and panic. They were all young elite disciples of various forces, with extraordinary potential, destined to become overlords in the future. Who would want to die here? They were filled with regret and annoyance, and they regretted it so much. If they had known this, they should have agreed to Qin Mu and chosen to join the Qin dynasty. In this way, they would not have been forced to go to the front line and become the vanguard army. But it was obviously too late for them to regret it now. From the moment they stepped onto the battlefield, they had no way out. If they were fighting for the sect, then even if they became traitors, they would at most be expelled from the sect and condemned. But their identities at this time were soldiers of the Qin dynasty, warriors. There was only one outcome for a warrior to retreat on the battlefield, that is, to be killed as a deserter at will. They did not expect that the lord of the Qin dynasty was so cruel and ruthless that he made them the vanguard army. They did not want to die. But at this moment, they could only fight desperately and try to delay time. In this situation, even they themselves can't guarantee that they can survive. Qin Mu is forcing us to fight them, someone sighed, with a flash of madness in his eyes. In this case, let's fight them. After that, the monk rushed into the enemy. Kill. The other monks saw this, their eyes turned red, and they no longer hesitated, and rushed towards the enemy. This is their only way to survive. Looking for death. The Qingtian audience sneered, fearless, and took out their weapons to fight. In an instant, the two groups fought together, and the scene was extremely thrilling. However, due to the well-trained and tacit cooperation of the Qingtian Temple, they soon gained the upper hand and suppressed the monks of the Qin vanguard army. Moreover, the Qingtian Temple was also blessed by the formation, which was even more threatening. Under the blessing of the formation, the strength of the Qingtian audience was greatly improved, and every sword swung down contained infinite power. Even the monks of the same realm could not withstand their attack. Bang, bang, bang. After a few encounters, dozens of vanguard soldiers were seriously injured and fell to the ground. In just a few minutes, the great Qin vanguard began to retreat step by step, with more and more casualties and heavy losses. Ha ha ha, Dakan dogs, you all die, the people of Qingtian Temple roared excitedly. Especially the deacons who led the team, who killed very happily. Ha ha, the Lord of Dakan is still too young after all, and he actually tried to use these garbage to stop us, someone laughed sarcastically. These guys are all old-timers. Humph, a bunch of spineless people, really embarrassed men. They are seeking their own death. Ha ha, kill them, let them all be buried with us. The disciples of Qingtian Temple laughed excitedly, and they were extremely happy. Ah, a cultivator howled to the sky, his eyes red, like a mad beast, and madly attacked the formation. But his power was completely useless under the formation, and he was easily suppressed. Then a shot pierced his chest and fell to the ground and died. His body twitched several times, and he was completely dead. This scene made everyone's heart palpitate, and they wanted to retreat again. After all, they were not machines that only knew how to kill, and they were still full of fear of death. Who would dare to move forward when they knew they would die? However, just as they were about to retreat, a sharp sword light suddenly cut through the void and instantly pierced through one person's head. Puff! Blood splattered, and the screams stopped abruptly. Corpses fell to the ground one after another, and their deaths were extremely miserable. Seeing this scene, the other cultivators were so scared that their livers and gallbladders broke, and they trembled all over. Whoever dares to retreat will be killed without mercy, Zhang Luoshan shouted, her beautiful eyes full of ferocity and tyranny. In this war scene, Zhang Luoshan thoroughly showed her iron-fisted side. She had no mercy at all, and mercilessly killed those deserters who tried to retreat and affect the morale of the army. Seeing this scene, everyone immediately extinguished the idea of retreating, and all went forward with their heads held high. I don't believe that with so many of us, we can't take down a mere Qingtian Temple formation, someone roared, gritting his teeth and rushing towards the Qingtian Temple disciples. Kill, the other cultivators shouted and rushed over together. The cultivators who joined the Qin in the back looked at the miserable scene of the vanguard army and were very grateful in their hearts. Fortunately, they chose to join the Qin early, so they got rid of the fate of becoming cannon fodder, otherwise they would definitely be the same as them now. Boom boom boom. The disciples of Qingtian Temple activated the formation and used offensive techniques to continuously attack the monks who tried to approach the formation. For a moment, screams were heard everywhere, broken limbs and arms flew everywhere, and the bloody smell filled the entire mountain range, suffocating people. The great Qin vanguard suffered heavy casualties, but they still launched the attack fearlessly. They all knew that if they fled without fighting, they would surely die. So, they could only fight desperately, and perhaps there was still a glimmer of hope. Kill! The great Qin soldiers roared and desperately attacked the Qingtian Temple defense formation, looking like they were ready to die. Seeing their bravery, the monks of the Qingtian Temple also began to get nervous. After all, they relied on the advantages of the formation and the tacit cooperation to gain the upper hand. In terms of numbers and overall strength, they were not actually superior. Now it is much more difficult to deal with this group of fearless vanguards. If they continue to fight like this, the winner may be the Qin. When they thought of this, the faces of the Qingtianguan monks turned ugly. If they continue like this, they will be the losers. Are these bastards crazy? A Qingtianguan monk shouted in fear. What should we do? What should we do? Someone asked in panic. Elder, what should we do? If we continue like this, the formation will not last long, a deacon frowned and asked. Damn it, An elder of King Tianguan looked at all this. His face was extremely gloomy and his eyes were full of resentment. They originally thought that the Qin vanguard would surrender, but they didn't expect it to be so stubborn. This Qin dynasty simply doesn't treat people as human beings at all. They were killed just by taking 2 steps back. This is too cruel, a disciple cursed angrily. Crazy, they are all a bunch of crazy people. Others were also angry. In their opinion, the Qin vanguard should retreat. But not only did they not retreat, they also fought to the death with King Tianguan. Don't worry, fellow disciples. This formation was personally arranged by the Supreme Elder. It is more solid than you can imagine. How can they shake it? An elder consoled. Hearing this, everyone felt a little relieved. However, even so, they were still unsure. They always felt that something terrible would happen. Sure enough. Just as everyone was worried, a strong pressure suddenly swept across the 8 directions, shocking the sky. The pressure was so strong that it seemed to destroy everything, making everyone feel cold all over, and they couldn't help but feel awe in their hearts. I saw a beautiful figure stepping into the air, so fast that it was difficult to see with the naked eye, and arrived at the battlefield in an instant. She held a long sword in her hand, her clothes fluttering, like a fairy from outer space. Xuanhuan's pretty face was indifferent, holding a sharp sword, exuding a monstrous murderous aura. She was dressed in white, ice-like, beautiful and cold, like a goddess of the 9 heavens, making people submit. The moment they saw her, all the cultivators were stunned on the spot, and their breathing stagnated. She was surrounded by colorful clouds, and her temperament was ethereal and extraordinary, like a goddess of the sky, which made everything in the world pale in comparison. What a powerful aura! Who is she? Someone exclaimed. Xuanhuan's aura was very terrifying, and even across the formation, it still made everyone feel daunted. Swish! At this moment, 3 more figures passed through the sky. Each person's aura was unfathomable, especially the woman in the red skirt standing in the middle, who was even more terrifying. She was fierce and domineering, as if an immortal was looking down on all living things, making people feel submissive. This was a woman with a stunning appearance, tall and hot figure. Beside her were 2 younger girls. They wore simple and elegant green dresses, their skin was as white as jade, their postures were dignified and beautiful, and they were as delicate as paintings. But their dark eyes revealed a touch of coldness and indifference. It seemed that nothing could arouse their interest, or in other words, it was not in their eyes at all. Qin Mu's shadow could be vaguely seen on them, giving people a mysterious and noble feeling. Although they did not speak, the oppression they brought to people was more terrible than any other person. These are the other 3 saints. Seeing this scene, the hearts of the King Tianguan monks were pounding, and their faces were full of horror. The sudden appearance of 4 saints caught them off guard. Especially the elders of King Tianguan, whose pupils shrank violently, and a strong sense of crisis rose in their hearts. These are 4 saints, and their auras are strong and powerful, obviously not ordinary saints. Why are you still standing there? Quickly activate the 2nd formation and prepare for defense. At this time, the elder of King Tianguan shouted. After hearing this, the other disciples of King Tianguan immediately came back to their senses from the shock. Immediately, everyone pinched their fingers together and made a series of complex and obscure marks. Buzz! Suddenly, the light burst out, dazzling and eye-catching. The formation was in operation, and wisps of runes emerged, emitting ancient and vicissitudes of life. Everyone, pay attention, stop these guys at all costs. Seeing this scene, the elder of Qingtian Temple looked solemn and shouted again. Yes, elder, the disciples of Qingtian Temple responded one after another, and then poured their magic power into the formation base. Kaka. With their magic power blessing, the light of the formation became more and more dazzling, almost illuminating the void. Buzz buzz buzz. In an instant, the formation trembled continuously, and burst out with brilliant light. At the same time, a huge torrent of energy gushed out from the ground and poured into the formation. Bang! A magnificent light shield enveloped the entire Qingtian temple, protecting it and forming a top-secret defense. After getting ready, the elders of Qingtian temple breathed a sigh of relief. But soon they became alert again. Because the four saints did not leave. Instead, they stood in front of the formation and waited quietly. Their momentum was too strong, like a giant of heaven and earth, suppressing everything. The elders of Qingtian temple were in a heavy mood, not knowing what they wanted to do. "You guys retreat quickly," an elder of Qingtian temple mustered up his courage, stepped forward and shouted loudly. Boom! However, just as he approached, a terrifying attack suddenly fell. This attack came from the woman in the red skirt, containing surging power, which made the elder of Qingtian temple change his face and filled his heart with fear. Not good, the elder of Qingtian temple changed his expression suddenly. Swoosh! He hurriedly used his strongest martial arts, turning into a dazzling blue ball of light and rushing towards the attack. Boom! The next moment, the blue ball of light exploded, turning into rolling thunder that resounded through the sky. The terrible energy ripples raged, destroying the surrounding buildings like a dead tree and rotten wood, causing the formation to shake continuously. The elder of Qingtian temple was injured and vomited blood, and was in a miserable state. Fortunately, he was strong, otherwise he would have died in that blow just now. But even so, he was seriously injured and it would be difficult to recover in a short time. The other disciples of Qingtian temple around him were blown all over the place by the terrifying strong wind. Hiss! Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. How is it possible? The woman in the red skirt defeated the elder with just one move. Many disciples stared with their eyes wide open, speechless in shock. They only felt their scalps tingling and their hearts chilled. That was the elder of Qingtian temple, and he was so easily injured by the other party. If they went up, wouldn't it be a dead end? At this moment, everyone looked at the red-skirted woman and others with deep fear. "I advise you to surrender immediately and stop resisting fearlessly, otherwise," the cold voice of the red-skirted woman came out, making the whole audience quiet down. Her eyes slowly swept around, and her tone was majestic, "Otherwise, there will be no mercy." A simple sentence, but it revealed the extreme murderous intent, which made people shudder. "Don't even think about it," a group of Qingtian temple disciples gritted their teeth and shouted angrily, with a firm expression and no fear. "I think you should surrender. Our Qingtian temple supreme elders and ancestors will be here soon, and you will definitely be brought to justice at that time." "That's right." The monks of Qingtian temple shouted one after another. Seeing this, the red-skirted woman shook her head and sighed, with a trace of pity in her eyes. Stubborn, a low and cold voice sounded. The next moment, the red-skirted woman waved her hand and slapped it, and a terrifying purple light shot out and hit the light shield of the formation fiercely. Boom! The formation shook, and the void collapsed. Not good, the pupils of the Qingtian temple elder shrank into needles, and his face was full of horror. However, he had no time to stop it, and the terrifying purple light collapsed on the light shield. Puff! The elder of Qingtian temple suffered a backlash, and immediately spurted blood, and his body flew in the air. Under this force, the Qingtian temple monks also trembled fiercely and spit out blood. "Brothers, I can't hold on," someone screamed in despair, his whole body covered in blood. "Send a message to the sect," the elder of Qingtian temple gritted his teeth and said. Before the voice fell, a jade talisman suddenly shot from a distance. The elder of Qingtian temple was slightly stunned, and immediately reached out to grab the jade talisman to check the news inside. In an instant, his pupils suddenly contracted. "At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 545. The Supreme Elder and the others are missing. The elder of Qingtian Temple was filled with astonishment, and his soul was shaken. What? Gone? Where is the Supreme Elder? Hearing the words of the elder of Qingtian Temple, all the monks of Qingtian Temple were shocked and showed disbelief. The Supreme Elder's strength is at the pinnacle level of a quasi-emperor. He is only a hair away from the legendary imperial realm and is famous throughout the human race. But now, he has disappeared? How so? What happened? Everyone's minds were shaken violently, and their heads were buzzing. At this moment, they seemed to have fallen into the 9 nether hells, feeling that the end of the world was coming. The Supreme Elder is the only support and hope of Qingtian Temple. Now that he has disappeared inexplicably, what else can he use to fight against the enemy? At this thought, everyone panicked. The audience in Qingtian was panic-stricken, with a sense of extreme despair and fear welling up deep in their hearts. Those disciples, in particular, were more like orphans without an owner, at a loss. Don't panic, everyone. Maybe it's just the Supreme Elder who is practicing in seclusion. Let's wait patiently. He will definitely be able to come back. The elder of King Tianguan looked pale, but he still pretended to be calm and shouted. They are now at a disadvantage. If people's hearts are chaotic again at this time, it will be completely over. So no matter what the situation is, he must first stabilize people's hearts. Really, Elder? Did the Supreme Elder really not abandon us? A disciple asked with wide eyes and doubts. Of course, the Supreme Elder is so powerful and his abilities are all over the world. How can he be intimidated by a few foreign enemies? She must have other important matters. You must believe the Supreme Elder. She will be back soon, Elder King Tianguan said loudly. The Supreme Elder will definitely lead us to kill them and avenge us. The disciples of Qingtian Temple cheered up and shouted, feeling a little calmer inside. Although the words of Elder King Tianguan seemed a bit weak, they finally gave everyone some faith. The Supreme Elder is the only hope of Qingtian Temple. Her strength is undoubted. As long as she can come back, she will not lose. Yes. Our Supreme Elder is a powerful quasi-emperor at the pinnacle. He is not afraid even when facing a true emperor-level powerhouse. A few evil demons and crooked ways are nothing. As long as the Supreme Elder returns, these demons and evil thieves will definitely be eradicated. Yes. As long as the Supreme Elder comes, they won't be able to escape. Soon some disciples began to gain courage, put aside all their fears, and began to cheer for themselves. Seeing them return to their normal state, the elder of Qingtian Temple breathed a sigh of relief. As long as most of the disciples can stay calm, then they still have a chance. However, no one noticed that the corners of the mouths of the woman in red and the others were slightly curved. These people are so ridiculously stupid. Ji Hongii glanced at the monk Qingtian Temple indifferently, her eyes full of disdain and contempt. Yes, these people are really pitiful. At this time, they still imagine that their Supreme Elder can save them, but they don't know that they have already become abandoned children. Xuanhuan nodded, a trace of teasing flashing across her beautiful eyes. Everything is under your Majesty's control. Ji Hongii smiled softly, tenderness flowing in her beautiful eyes. Xuanhuan smiled and said, after today's battle, the cancer of Qingtian Temple will be pulled out, and the reputation of Great Qin will be powerful in the 9 regions, and your Majesty will become the true co-leader of the human race. Hearing this, Xuanhui's smile became even brighter and more beautiful. Then what are you waiting for? As soon as the words fell, the 2 men immediately spread their figures and rushed forward like lightning. At this time, the elder of Qingtian Temple was still comforting his disciples. Don't worry, the Supreme Elder will definitely come to save us, Elder King Tianguan said with a smile, his face full of kindness. He believed that as long as the disciples stayed together, they would not be defeated so easily. However, just as Elder King Tianguan showed a smile, he suddenly froze. Boom, boom, boom. A violent roar suddenly exploded. Only a few bright sword lights were seen, impacting with destructive power. They were extremely fast, piercing the night sky and plundering like a meteor shower. Quickly strengthen the formation, Elder King Tianguan shouted hurriedly, looking horrified. Bang bang, click. The dull and loud noise shook the void, and the terrifying attack tore a hole in the blue sky illusion array in an instant. There was an ear-piercing explosion, and violent spiritual power raged through the void, causing the surrounding rocks to shatter into powder. Although the elder of King Tianguan mobilized the sect-protecting formation to resist in time, those sword lights came too fast and fiercely, and several sword lights exploded, setting off a devastating sword wave. If this continues, the blue sky illusion array won't be able to hold on for too long. Damn it! Seeing the terrifying sword wave that spread rapidly, the elder of Qingtian Temple roared angrily, and the blood and spiritual power in his body suddenly burned and poured into the array crazily. Array up, the elder of Qingtian Temple roared fiercely, with veins bulging all over his body. In an instant, the originally incomplete formation suddenly became dazzling, blooming with blazing brilliance. Immediately afterwards, large pieces of runes shot out from everywhere, intertwining into a huge magic circle covering a radius of 300 feet. This magic circle is extremely strange, and as soon as it is formed, it emits a mysterious aura. At the same time, a solid shield barrier was formed around the magic circle. Boom! The violent sword wave surged and hit the shield barrier fiercely. After the collision, a low muffled sound was heard, shaking the void like a thunderbolt from the blue sky. The terrifying aftermath swept in all directions, sweeping away countless trees and grass, and even destroying a large number of houses and buildings. Fortunately, all the disciples of Qingtian Temple who participated in the battle had been covered by the formation, so not much damage was caused. However, although the Qingtian illusion formation resisted most of the attacks, a lot of power still poured in. Puff! The elder of Qingtian Temple was the first to bear the brunt, and he was immediately injured and vomited blood, screaming continuously. Quickly help me, the elder of Qingtian Temple gritted his teeth and shouted angrily. He desperately urged his spiritual power to madly increase the power of the magic circle. Master, don't panic, I'm here to help you. Elder, don't worry, I'm willing to serve you. Hearing the elder's call, the disciples immediately took action, put their palms on each other's backs, and then input spiritual power into their elders. The next moment, all the disciples and elders of Qingtian Temple flew into the air, gathered the spiritual power in their bodies into a torrent, and poured it into the Qingtian illusion formation frantically. Boom! Accompanied by a violent roar, the defense of the Qingtian illusion formation soared again. With the efforts of all the disciples and elders, the magic circle bloomed with a brighter golden glow, and it became heavier while shaking violently. Haha, finally blocked it? Feeling the surging power in his body, the elder of Qingtian Temple laughed excitedly. He knew that this level of attack should be enough to support for a while. Now, it's our turn to fight back. The elder of Qingtian Temple smiled coldly, his eyes flashed with cold light, and he looked up at the dragon chariot high in the sky, revealing his murderous intent. His intuition told him that as long as the being in the dragon chariot was killed, the crisis of Qingtian Temple might be resolved. However, this thought had just arisen, and the smile on his face had not yet faded. A chilling killing intent suddenly descended without warning. Not good. Feeling this chilling killing intent, the elder of Qingtian Temple's expression changed drastically, and his eyes were full of horror. Above the sky, a purple rainbow suddenly tore through the black curtain, carrying a cold and murderous aura, and fell straight down. Looking at the purple rainbow swooping down from the sky, everyone's mind was shocked, their heads buzzed, and they fell into a stagnation in an instant. At this moment, they seemed to feel a cold and sharp blade on their necks, as if their heads would fall to the ground in the next second. And they seemed to be deaf, and the whole world was still. This sword came slowly, like a staggering old man, or a weak child. It looked ordinary and had no power at all. But everyone in the Qingtian illusion formation, including the elder of Qingtian Temple, had no intention of resisting. How is it possible? The elder of Qingtian Temple's pupils contracted and his face was extremely ugly. The opponent's attack was too terrifying, which made him feel desperate and didn't even have a thought of resistance. Because instinct told him that this sword could not be resisted at all. What is this? No. Get out of the way. Ah! Everyone was terrified and screamed wildly. Facing this extraordinary power, they felt as fragile as babies. It's Your Majesty. Your Majesty finally took action. We are saved. Your Majesty is so heroic and will definitely wipe out all evil ways and return a bright and clear world to the human race. After seeing this scene, many pioneer monks cheered excitedly and were very excited. This sword was slashed from the dragon chariot. And there is obviously only one person who can slash such a sword from the dragon chariot, and that is the current lord of the great Qin, Qin Mu. At this moment, these pioneer monks no longer have any resentment in their hearts. All they have now is gratitude and gratitude to Qin Mu. They never thought that the lord of the great Qin, who has always been cold and ruthless and decisive in killing, would actually help them. Isn't this a special honor? In other words, they finally exchanged their lives for the recognition of the Lord of the Great Qin. Isn't this worth celebrating? After today's battle, they only fear Qin Mu, and no longer have any dissent. It's over, in the Qingtian illusion formation, the corners of the eyes of the elders of Qingtian Temple twitched, and his face showed despair. No. No. The other two supreme elders were full of indignation and grief, and their eyes flashed with endless unwillingness and hatred. However, at this point, even if they were unwilling, it would be useless. The final outcome was still annihilation. Looking at the purple rainbow slowly falling from the sky, everyone clearly knew that they were in danger today and were destined to be buried here. The purple rainbow sword cut through the void, carrying the force of thunder and lightning, and arrived in front of the Qingtian illusion formation in a blink of an eye. It's over. It's really over this time. A Qingtian Temple disciple was pale and trembling. What should we do? Are we going to be destroyed? Many disciples looked dazed and confused. No, we must escape, otherwise we will all die. Yes. Run away. A panicked scream and a terrified howl suddenly rang out in the Qingtian illusion formation. And the several elders of Qingtian Temple who were in the center of the Qingtian illusion formation were even more frightened. They knew very well that under this purple rainbow sword, not to mention the mortal body, even a powerful immortal weapon would probably be broken in half, right? Without any surprise, the Qingtian illusion formation collapsed instantly. The terrifying sword wave swept across the 8 directions, engulfing all the elders of Qingtian Temple like a dead tree and rotten wood. Rumble. The dull loud noise accompanied by a shrill scream suddenly spread, raising billowing smoke and dust. In front of the sword light, even the Qingtian Temple elders at the peak of the Saint Realm were as small as ants. In just a moment, the 3 Qingtian Temple elders turned into ashes and dissipated in the air, and their souls returned to the underworld. Although the others did not die immediately, they were also severely injured, and they fell to the ground wailing with blood. Ah! Save me! Save me! Looking at the purple rainbow sword that fell from the sky and exuded a cold aura, everyone in the Qingtian illusion formation fell into madness and fear. They knew that if they were cut by this purple rainbow sword, they would be beheaded and their bodies and souls would be destroyed. So, they ran out of the Qingtian illusion formation with all their strength. As long as they left the range of the illusion formation, they might be rescued. However, the moment Qin made his move, this place had become a restricted area. This Qingtian illusion formation, which they once regarded as a place of refuge, has now become their desperate prison. Ha ha ha! We won. Your Majesty is mighty, long live His Majesty. We swear to be loyal to His Majesty until death. The pioneers who had fled in panic were greatly encouraged after seeing this scene. This Qingtian illusion formation, which once forced them into a dead end, is now finally about to collapse. They believed that with Qin in charge, the destruction of Qingtian Temple was only a matter of time. They roared and swung their weapons towards the Qingtian illusion formation, ready to slaughter the remaining enemies. Your Majesty, please spare our lives. Seeing those vanguard monks who were killing red-eyed, the remaining disciples in the Qingtian illusion formation completely collapsed and knelt down to beg for mercy. They were not stupid. In this situation, if they continued to resist stubbornly, the only result would be to die with this illusion formation. Instead of doing so, it would be better to beg for mercy, and perhaps there would be a chance to survive. After all, they were still young and did not want to die here like this. Your Majesty, spare us, many disciples wailed together. The surviving elders of Qingtian Temple looked at the disciples in this posture, and they were all disappointed, but they could do nothing, and finally they could only sigh. The battle has not yet begun, and the result is self-evident. They were abandoned and treated as abandoned. Ha ha ha! I didn't expect that I would die here in my old age after working hard for Qingtian Temple for thousands of years. It's really sad and lamentable. The elder of Qingtian Temple sighed to the sky, with deep regret and some deep unwillingness in his eyes. He wanted to negotiate with the people in the dragon chariot, but he knew that he was not qualified at all. Alas, the elder of Qingtian Temple shook his head and sighed, his face full of dejection and bitterness. But soon, he shook his head and smiled, forget it, since it is fate, just obey it. The elder of Qingtian Temple suddenly raised his head, exuding a resolute aura, as if he was ready to die generously. You are open-minded. Just when he was about to close his eyes and wait for death, a cold voice suddenly sounded in his ears. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 546. The elder of Qingtian Temple was startled when he heard this. He looked up at the dragon chariot in the sky. The voice just now was obviously coming from the dragon chariot. Your Excellency can kill or chop me up. We are not as skilled as you, so there is nothing to say, the elder of Qingtian Temple asked in a deep voice. I will not kill you. Qin Mu's voice came slowly, which surprised the elder of Qingtian Temple. Not killing himself? The elder of Qingtian Temple raised his eyebrows slightly, guessing secretly, not understanding what Qin Mu was up to. Could this man have some conspiracy? He thought that the other party wanted to use him to sacrifice the sword to intimidate the disciples of Qingtian Temple, but he didn't expect Qin Mu to not kill him. When the pioneer monks heard Qin Mu's words, they were all dumbfounded. Your Majesty actually let these bastards go. This is impossible. How could your Majesty do this? Your Majesty, you must not let the tiger go back to the mountain. The Qingtian illusion formation has been destroyed, and the pioneer monks no longer have any scruples. Everyone was ready to surrender all the Qingtian Temple monks to avenge their past. However, Qin Mu ignored everyone's doubts and slowly said, I won't kill you because you are not qualified to die under my sword. What did you say? Qin Mu's words stunned everyone, and their eyes widened with resentment. Yes, they did intend to surrender and beg for mercy, but Qin Mu directly treated them as garbage and disdained to do it. You are simply too much. Based on your words, we would rather die standing than live in disgrace. Haha, you overestimate yourself. Even if we die, we will drag you to be buried with us. Several monks in Qingtian temple were furious and cursed. Noisy. The two cold and indifferent words made everyone stiff, like stone sculptures. Then, an unspeakable sense of oppression enveloped them. The next moment, the void trembled, and a dazzling golden sword light whizzed in and slashed fiercely at the group of monks. Puff puff. This sword light seemed to have spirituality, only targeting a few Qingtian temple monks who cursed the most fiercely. Puff. The next moment, their bodies suddenly exploded, spraying scarlet blood all over the sky. Immediately, the corpse fell from mid-air and hit the ground, making a violent vibration, awakening the four fields. In the Qingtian illusion array, there was silence, and a pin drop could be heard. Everyone was stunned, staring at the tragic scene in front of them with their mouths wide open, their minds blank. The horror of Qin Mu's sword was immediately revealed. The Qingtian temple monks were so frightened that they were silent, trembling, and couldn't even speak. They couldn't help but turn their heads to look at the dragon chariot, their hearts filled with fear. Do you want to use us for something? The elder of Qingtian temple frowned and asked. Haha, Qin Mu smiled slightly, and asked instead of answering, do you think that with your little cultivation, is there any value for me to use? Hearing this, everyone was speechless. Although they are the elite disciples of Qingtian temple, they are completely worthless to Qin Mu. In that case, why don't you kill us? The elder of Qingtian temple frowned and asked. Qin Mu said indifferently, I came here to kill people, but not to kill you. The elder of Qingtian temple raised his eyebrows and his face became strange. What do you mean? The elder of Qingtian temple frowned and asked. Qin Mu said indifferently, you people of Qingtian temple deserve to die, and you should be killed, but you are not the ones who deserve to die, you are just victims. What does your majesty mean by this? The elder of Qingtian temple became more and more confused as he listened. Others also didn't understand what Qin Mu meant, and looked at each other in disbelief. Qin Mu smiled slightly and explained, I'm looking for the mastermind behind the scenes, not the disciples of Qingtian temple. The pupils of the elder of Qingtian temple shrank, and his face was horrified. He didn't know what he was thinking of, and his eyes changed slightly. Then, he took a deep breath, bowed and said, Your Majesty, please make it clear. When the others heard the elder of Qingtian temple call Qin Mu Your Majesty, they looked at each other in confusion. But they still followed the elder of Qingtian temple to pay their respects. Qin Mu sat in the dragon sedan, his eyes swept across the audience, and slowly said, in consideration of your difficult practice, I can give you a chance to atone for your sins. A chance to atone for your sins. Hearing Qin Mu's words, the elder of Qingtian temple was stunned again. What? You don't want to? Qin Mu narrowed his eyes slightly, and his tone suddenly turned cold. Sensing Qin Mu's coldness, the elders of Qingtian temple hurriedly bowed and said respectfully, I would like to hear the details. A cold arc flashed across Qin Mu's mouth, and he said indifferently, some people in your Qingtian temple colluded with evil demons and demons to harm the human race, committing heinous crimes and deserve death. Therefore, I declare that the Qingtian temple's Taoist lineage will be abolished. Do you have any objections? As soon as these words came out, the elders of Qingtian temple were shocked. You want to abolish my Qingtian temple's Taoist lineage? The elders of Qingtian temple were unable to understand. Qin Mu snorted coldly, Humph. Your Qingtian temple colluded with evil demons, and the evidence is conclusive. Such a rebellious sect, how can I allow it to exist in the world? Qin Mu said in a low voice, from today on, you will leave Qingtian temple and form the Great Qin Atonement Camp. Each person will do 10,000 good deeds and kill 10,000 monsters a year to atone for the sins and eliminate the sins. The elder of Qingtian temple was pale and trembling violently. After a long silence, he suddenly raised his head and looked at the golden dragon chariot above his head seriously, and said solemnly, Your Majesty, since you said the evidence is conclusive, can you show us the evidence? When these words came out, the eyes of many monks in Qingtian temple were brightened. Qin Mu smiled and waved his right hand gently. Whoosh! Two objects suddenly flew out of the dragon chariot, turning into a silver light and shooting towards the elder of Qingtian temple. The elder of Qingtian temple looked solemn and reached out to catch it. Looking closely, it turned out to be two bloody heads, which were the heads of the master of Qingtian temple and the Taoist of Qingtian temple. The moment they saw the heads clearly, all the disciples of Qingtian temple widened their eyes, their faces full of disbelief. Especially the elders of Qingtian temple, they were in tears. Master, Daizai. Instantly, a shrill wail resounded through the sky, and the grief was overwhelming. Instantly, all the elders of Qingtian temple knelt on the ground, weeping and wailing. The master and Daizai of Qingtian temple were the support of their faith, and now they were killed by Qin Mu himself. This was like a bolt from the blue for Qingtian temple. How could they bear it? Qin Mu sat in the dragon chariot, looking at everything in front of him calmly. Your Majesty, is this your evidence? The elder of Qingtian temple said in a deep voice. Qin Mu smiled slightly, waved his hand again, and two light shadows flew out of the dragon chariot and floated in the air. The monks of Qingtian temple looked up with tears in their eyes, and their eyes were shocked again. These two light shadows were none other than the master of Qingtian temple and Daizai of Qingtian temple. This was their spirit. The two arrogant and powerful men had already lost their lives. The power of the soul was dim, and it was obvious that they had suffered fatal injuries. Seeing the souls of the two, the elders of Qingtian temple and others were completely stunned. Originally thought that the master of Qingtian temple had fallen. Who could have expected that their souls were actually imprisoned by Qin Mu? The elders of Qingtian temple gritted their teeth, resentful, distressed the audience of Qingtian temple and Daizai, and were completely desperate in their hearts. Now the master and Daizai have fallen, and the supreme elder is gone. Qingtian temple is completely finished. No one can save them. What? Still have doubts? Qin Mu asked with a smile. The elders of Qingtian temple clenched their fists and gritted their teeth and said, Your Majesty, if there is no evidence, you probably can't execute the head of Qingtian temple and Daizai casually, right? Qin Mu nodded, Of course I have evidence. Then you quickly take out the evidence, an elder shouted anxiously. You can take a look at the evidence first, I am looking forward to seeing your expressions. Qin Mu smiled. The elder of Qingtian temple hesitated for a moment, then looked at the two souls and found that the spiritual seals in the souls were still there. This means that the two are still alive. Thinking of this, the elder of Qingtian temple breathed a sigh of relief and felt much more relaxed. Although he didn't know what method Qin Mu used to preserve the souls of the two, at least they were still alive. The master of Qingtian temple slowly raised his head, and a trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. Then he looked at the familiar scene in front of him and the familiar elders, and stood there in a daze, as if he was scared silly. Master, Master, what's wrong with you? Wake up, an elder called in a low voice. Unfortunately, the master of Qingtian temple seemed not to hear it, except that his eyes gradually became wet. What's going on? Why is this happening? Where is our supreme elder? The master of Qingtian temple asked 3 questions in a row, his eyes filled with deep confusion and puzzlement. Who am I, where am I? The master of Qingtian temple kept muttering to himself, and his eyes began to blur again. Looking at the appearance of the master of Qingtian temple, all the elders of Qingtian temple frowned, feeling inexplicably sad. Don't play dumb, tell the truth to the world and your disciples. Qin Mu's faint voice reached the ears of the master of Qingtian temple. The master of Qingtian temple froze all over, sighed after a moment, and slowly raised his head to look around. I am the master of Qingtian temple. The master of Qingtian temple looked around the whole audience, and his voice was slightly hoarse. Hearing this, the Qingtian audience monks looked at him together. Master, the disciples of Qingtian audience knelt on the ground one after another, crying bitterly. Master, you finally woke up. Some elders were also in tears and excited. Master, we finally waited for you. Many younger disciples of Qingtian Temple also knelt down. Looking at the disciples of Qingtian Temple in front of him, the master of Qingtian Temple had a very complicated look. He looked around, looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar Qingtian Temple. His eyes were red. He sighed again, and said slowly, I am a sinner, ashamed to Qingtian Temple. I have failed the trust of Qingtian Temple. I am ashamed of the ancestors of all generations, and I am even more sorry for the hundreds of millions of people in Daoxuan domain. As he spoke, the master of Qingtian Temple knelt down directly with his legs softened. I am sorry for the martyrs of Taoism. Master, please get up quickly, many elders shouted in panic. But they couldn't help the master of Qingtian Temple at all, so they had to let him kneel on the ground all the time, not daring to help him at all. Looking at the actions of the master of Qingtian Temple, the disciples of Qingtian Temple wiped their tears and their eyes were red. Alas! The master of Qingtian Temple sighed and continued, all the tragic incidents that happened in Daoxuan domain recently were all caused by my Qingtian Temple. I, Qingtian Temple, was blinded by greed, colluded with demons, poisoned the people, and killed countless innocent lives. We deserve to die. We are not worthy of being descendants of Taoism. I am ashamed of the martyrs, ashamed of my ancestors, and I will die with shame, the master of Qingtian Temple roared in pain. When everyone heard this, they were stunned in place for a moment, looking at each other, their faces full of disbelief. How is this possible? Did the master really do it? Everyone was shocked and unbelievable, and they were unwilling to believe it anyway. Master, several young disciples couldn't help but rush to the master of Qingtian Temple and burst into tears. Master, how can you be so confused? Master, wake up, stop talking nonsense. The master of Qingtian Temple closed his eyes, took a deep breath, shook his head and said, everyone, I am very sober and I am not controlled by anyone. At this point, the master of Qingtian Temple opened his eyes and his eyes became cold. I know it's hard for you to believe, but this is indeed the truth. Not only that, my Qingtian Temple also took advantage of the celebration to hunt down the human race's genius, obtain a large number of treasures, and refine blood to improve cultivation. All of these, one by one, each one, are enough to make us fall into eternal damnation. Everyone was silent, unable to utter a word. They had never thought that the Qingtian Temple master, who was usually highly respected, fair, strict, and upright, would actually commit such a heinous crime. Master, please stop talking, the disciples cried and begged. The other elders were also sad. They didn't expect that the Qingtian Temple, which they were proud of, would become such a vicious and sinister evil demon. The head of Qingtian Temple waved his hand to stop everyone from advising him. He said coldly, I must let the world know, let them see the ugly face of our Qingtian Temple with their own eyes. He took a deep breath and continued, I have done such a shameless evil. Even if I die today, I will not be able to escape the blame. I will never allow you to be implicated because of me. I am ready. I am willing to die to apologize. Please make sure to tell the whole world about this, the head of Qingtian Temple shouted. Is it over if you die to apologize? What should we do? How can we explain to the ancestors of Qingtian Temple? The Qingtian Temple monks were sad. Qingtian Temple was founded for tens of thousands of years and won countless glory, but now it is gone in one day. They, the monks of Qingtian Temple, will also become rats crossing the street and be spurned by everyone. Alas, the head of Qingtian Temple sighed and turned to look at Qin Mu. His eyes were extremely deep, revealing a complex emotion. He suddenly shook his head and said bitterly, "Your Majesty, my Qingtian temple has been defeated. You can kill me or chop me up as you please." As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Mu sneered and raised his hand without any warning. Snap! A huge golden palm suddenly appeared. This palm was very powerful and hit the side of the Qingtian temple master's face, leaving a bright red palm print. Puff! After this blow, the Qingtian temple master staggered 2 steps and fell to the ground, looking listless. "Of course you will die, but not now." Qin Mu's tone was cold, and his eyes looked far away. "There is still a good show waiting for you to witness." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 547. Hearing this, the master of Qingtian Temple's eyes flashed, as if he guessed something, and his face changed drastically. But his face only changed for a moment, and then he sighed slightly, and his eyes, which were originally lifeless, became even more dim. At this time, the people in Qingxi city who had been watching finally came to their senses, and they were stunned and horrified. My God, Qingtian Temple is really a group of demons. It's so scary, it's completely overturned my 3 views. No wonder the people in Kenju ancient cave disappeared. It turned out that they were destroyed by them. It turns out that the Lord of Dakan is right. Qingtian Temple is indeed the source of chaos and chaos. I dare not think about it, I really dare not think about it. It's too terrible. If it hadn't been exposed, would there be more innocent people who were harmed? Everyone was in an uproar, talking endlessly. Their expressions were full of shock and anger, and at the same time they felt a chill in their hearts. No one expected that Qingtian Temple was carrying such a secret, and they dared not imagine that they slaughtered the people. All the powerful people from various forces who had participated in the celebration and followed into the secret realm to explore were devoured by the evil spirits of Qingtian Temple. This is not a holy place at all, it is simply a den of wolves that eat people. Qingtian Temple is a holy place among humans and is well known in Daoxuan domain. In people's memory, this force has always maintained an image of kindness, generosity, and justice. Even in the hearts of the people, Qingtian Temple is like a god. But no one expected that such a group of evil spirits were hidden inside Qingtian Temple. All this is an illusion. These are all lies. Qingtian Temple is a demon. When they thought that they were not only defending Qingtian Temple, but also condemning the Qin dynasty, they suddenly felt cold all over and were scared to death. They retreated from Qingtian Temple Square one after another, not wanting to get close to Qingtian Temple again, for fear of being targeted by the evil spirits of Qingtian Temple and encountering danger. On Qingtian Temple Square, Lu Menger and others were even more confused. She was just preparing to sign up to join Qingyun Temple. As they guessed, joining Qingtian Temple was very smooth now. There was no need to take an assessment to become a registered disciple. So the entry procedures were completed quickly. Unexpectedly, they had just received the Qingtian Temple registered disciple badge, and before they had time to celebrate, such a scene appeared. At this moment, she looked at the Qingtian Temple registered disciple badge in her hand and felt a little confused. They had just joined Qingtian Temple, and Qingtian Temple collapsed like this. Especially when she saw the spirit shadows of the Qingtian Temple Master and Daizai, she was even more shocked on the spot, and her pretty little face was full of astonishment. How could this happen? Lu Menger murmured to herself, with a blank look in her beautiful eyes, and an unbelievable look. Qingtian Temple turned out to be a group of demons and evil demons. I don't believe it, I must have heard it wrong, this must be a rumor, it's fake. Lu Menger covered her little head and murmured to herself. Although the teenagers beside her didn't say anything, Their faces were very ugly, and they obviously didn't dare to believe this was true. What should we do now? A teenager asked hesitantly. The others looked at Lu Meng'er. The scene in front of them was beyond their cognition. I don't know either. If we had known, we would have left with senior brother King Yu. Lu Meng'er bit her teeth and whispered. Hearing this, everyone sighed. If they could have listened to Lin Qingyu's instructions and chosen to go with him, they might not have fallen into the current situation. Sister Meng'er, let's leave here first. At this time, a teenager reminded in a low voice. Okay, let's find senior brother Qingyu first. Lu Meng'er came back to her senses and immediately agreed. She also felt that the current situation was not something they could solve. The most urgent task was to find senior brother Qingyu first, and as for joining Qingtian Temple, it was temporarily shelved. Then, everyone left quickly. However, the entire Qingxi city has been completely blocked by the pioneers, and no one can escape quietly. It is impossible for Lu Meng'er and others to leave at this time, unless they can force their way out. But it is obvious that with the strength of Lu Meng'er and other boys and girls, it is impossible to force their way out. Damn it, what should we do? A young man shouted anxiously. Why don't we join Dakin? Someone suggested. This proposal was rejected as soon as it was made. No, wouldn't that make us fence-sitters? Didn't you see how cruel Dakin's means of executing deserters just now? What does this mean? It means that they hate deserters very much. In their eyes, we can betray Qingtian Temple without hesitation, and we may betray Dakin without hesitation in the future. If we surrender now, we may suffer some torture. As soon as this was said, everyone fell silent. Indeed, as the young man said, with the cruel means shown by Dakin, they may not have a good end if they choose to surrender to Dakin now. After all, the Qin dynasty killed even its own people. In this case, joining the Qin dynasty would be like sending yourself to the edge of a knife. After all, the Qin dynasty had just killed the deserters with extremely cruel means, so how could it take in people who betrayed their clan? But, can we just wait to be captured? A girl couldn't help but growl, her voice sharp and harsh. As a delicate girl, what she worries most about is her future destiny. This won't work, that won't work either. Should we just sit back and wait for death? Another girl also shouted angrily, obviously very annoyed. I do have a method, maybe you can try it at this moment, someone said. Hearing this, everyone turned to look at him with questioning expressions. How about we drive in the opposite direction and hide inside Qingtian Temple? Anyway, there must be something wrong inside Qingtian Temple. No one knows that we sneaked in. As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. In addition, one person whispered. Hush. Do you want your life? If the great Qin vanguard army catches you, you will definitely be dead. Lu Meng'er's pretty face changed drastically and she immediately scolded. Hearing this, the young man shrank his neck and did not dare to say anything anymore. Then what should we do? We can't just wait to die here, another young man asked. But you did remind me. Suddenly, Lu Meng'er's beautiful eyes lit up, and a touch of determination appeared on her delicate face. You are right. Since this is the main altar of Qingtian Temple, there must be many unknown secrets. As long as we find these secrets and then dedicate them to the Lord of the Qin dynasty, we will be guilty and meritorious, and we may be rewarded heavily. At this point, Lu Meng'er's eyes were burning, and a look of beauty appeared on her face. The color of excitement. Yes, we can also use our status as a waste card to go to the Qingtian Temple secret storehouse and have a look. Maybe we can gain something. Sister Meng'er is right. Wealth can be found in danger. Instead of waiting here to be caught, we might as well give it a try, just in case we win the bet. Yes, I agree with Sister Meng'er's opinion. The other boys and girls echoed, their eyes shining with excitement. Then leave quickly. After saying that, Lu Meng'er and others rushed towards the depths of Qingtian Temple. At the same time, in a quiet valley tens of thousands of miles away from Qingtian Temple, in front of a simple thatched hut, there were 3 desks. There are 4 old men sitting in front of the 2 desks on the left. They were all dressed in grey clothes, with majestic features and extraordinary demeanor, but they exuded a faint aura of decay, as if they were thousands of years old wood that had just been dug out of the ground 10,000 meters deep. On the table on the right, there is an old woman sitting upright. This old woman has dark skin, messy silver hair, and looks a bit sloppy. However, she didn't look sloppy at all. Instead, she exuded a powerful aura, as terrifying as a wild beast. Let's rest here for a while, and then we will go to the paradise realm, where I have arranged the address. The old woman slowly opened her eyes and said in a calm voice. Humph, there are 9 of us here. There are 4 quasi-emperors, 1 quasi-emperor at the peak, and 3 saints at the peak. Why do we abandon our sect and flee to other realms like defeated dogs? This is simply a shame and a great humiliation. An old man sitting in black robes shouted coldly. He had white beard and white hair, a wrinkled face, and dark red skin. There was a faint smell of blood exuding from his whole body, revealing a bit of evil intent. Yes, although Great Qin is powerful, we will never lose to it if we unite. It's so shameful that the top power in the continent has ended up in such a predicament. Another old woman in a yellow shirt said sadly, her voice slightly hoarse. She is the guardian elder of Qingtian Temple, Huangling Zhenjun, and she is also an existence in the quasi-emperor realm. Looking at the indignant crowd, the old woman sneered and said lightly, then I would like to know, how much lifespan do you have left to consume? Hearing this, everyone's expressions froze, their faces suddenly turned red, and they had nothing to say. Their faces are old and their bodies are weak. They have reached the point where they are running out of fuel and may die at any time. Seeing that everyone stopped talking, the old woman snorted coldly and continued, do you know that the Lord of Great Qin is only in his early 20s, and he is already a terrifying existence in the realm of quasi-emperor. Once a war breaks out, he can kill us just by consuming us. Hearing this, everyone's heart skipped a beat. 4 quasi-emperors in their early 20s, this kind of thing is simply beyond their imagination. Is this information true? Is the Lord of Great Qin really in his 20s? The old man in black robe said tremblingly. He was originally unconvinced by the Lord of the Qin dynasty and thought that together with so many powerful beings, they would be enough to destroy the Qin dynasty. But now that they heard that the other party was only in their 20s, they instantly felt a sense of fear and timidity in their hearts. Humph. I personally sent people to investigate, it should be true. The old woman sneered and said, it is said that this person has outstanding talents. Not only is he a martial artist at the quasi-emperor level, but he also has countless powerful trump cards. If we really fight, we will definitely die, and we will even become a stepping stone for him to reach a higher level. Not to mention that there is a group of saints standing behind him, and maybe even a quasi-emperor who also has sufficient lifespan. Are we going to fight him? What do you think the chances of winning are? After hearing these words, everyone's expression suddenly became depressed, their faces were pale, and their foreheads were sweating. They all understood the old woman's worries. Indeed, with their current dilapidated appearance, it was impossible for them to defeat the Lord of Qin. Unless, they are willing to sacrifice their own lives and drag the Lord of the Great Qin to be buried with them. But is this possible? They have tried everything to prolong their lives, even using the blood refining method. How can they be willing to die? If they sacrifice themselves now, wouldn't it be a waste of time? So, no one would choose to do this. Therefore, everyone fell silent. Do we really have to surrender to the paradise domain? After a long time, an old man in a black robe sighed, his tone full of sadness. They all knew what they would face after surrendering to the paradise domain, and they would be controlled by others forever. Humph, surrender to the paradise domain? That is absolutely impossible. We just go out to avoid the limelight temporarily. The old woman sneered, and then said, as long as we are alive, we have a chance to make a comeback. After all, we still have some chips. Oh? What chips? Hearing this, everyone immediately perked up a little and looked at the old woman. They had long known that the old woman held a shocking secret in her hand. Have you forgotten who helped us leave? The old woman smiled softly. Huh, everyone was stunned at first, but soon remembered and their eyes widened. You mean, that black shadow? Yes, the old woman nodded, with a strange arc on the corner of her mouth. As long as we have it, we will definitely have a chance to make a comeback. Maybe we can even break through to a higher realm. When they heard the words higher realm, everyone's eyes were filled with blazing expectations. Haha, good. In this case, let the Lord of the Great Qin be happy for a few days. When they think we have disappeared, we will suddenly rise up and give them a fatal blow. This matter is decided. The black-robed old man clapped his hands and laughed, as if he had seen the scene of the Lord of the Great Qin, whose appearance they still didn't know, being killed by them. Okay, don't waste time, set off as soon as possible, so as not to have more dreams at night. Finally, the old woman waved her hand and said. After that, she went straight to the depths of the hut. There was a huge black hole in the depths, which was extremely dark, as if it led to another world. The black hole was surrounded by array runes, which blocked it and isolated everything, making it impossible for people to enter. The remaining few old men looked at each other, and then followed in together. Swoosh! 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 Everyone rushed into the black hole and disappeared here as streams of light. After they left, the hut was calm again. And not long after they left, a light sound suddenly came from the woods hundreds of feet away, as if a figure flashed. Then, it was quiet again. At the same time, above Qingtian Temple, in the dragon chariot, Qin Mu slowly retracted his gaze, with a playful smile on his lips, and muttered to himself, the good show is about to begin. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 548. Night falls and the stars shine brightly. The mountains and forests outside the city are desolate, without any trace of human habitation. Boo-hoo! Several figures flew over from a distance. Looking carefully, it turned out to be the ancestors of Qingtian Temple, the old woman in black and others. Their speed was extremely fast, and they penetrated the jungle in no time. Stop! The old woman in black stopped suddenly and waved her hand to signal everyone to stop. Although the other ancestors were puzzled, they did not ask any questions. The old woman in black looked around and felt the empty and quiet atmosphere around her. She frowned slightly and said, "Why do I always have a bad premonition, as if danger is approaching?" Hearing this, the other ancestors all showed solemn expressions. They all used their spiritual power to be alert to their surroundings and be on guard against possible enemies appearing in the dark. But the surroundings were extremely quiet and there was no movement. We have completely blocked our spiritual consciousness. It is impossible for anyone to detect us. An old man shook his head and said, obviously feeling that the old woman in black was making a fuss out of a molehill. I always feel that something is not right. Am I too sensitive? A trace of hesitation flashed across the eyebrows of the old woman in black, and she felt inexplicably uneasy. I think you're a bit over the top, another old man said lightly. Relax, maybe you are worrying too much. No matter what, be careful when sailing the ship of 10,000 years, the old woman in black said in a deep voice. Keep on going, lest you have a long night of dreams. The old woman in black pondered for a moment, and then she continued to lead everyone on their way. However, they didn't know that after they stepped into this place, a cold gaze was already watching them from the dark. Huh! In the dark night, a wisp of breeze blew by. Immediately, two slender figures appeared out of thin air in the originally empty void. One of the figures was wearing tight-fitting black leather armor, outlining exquisite curves. His skin was whiter than snow, and his facial features were exquisite, as holy and flawless as a fairy. However, there was a hint of coldness on this charming and beautiful face. "I found you," the woman said coldly. She raised her eyes and glanced in the direction where the old woman in black and others were leaving, with a sarcastic look on her lips. The other figure has silver hair, a graceful figure, a voluptuous and alluring figure, and exudes a charming temperament. He is indeed a powerful man who once dominated the world. His strength is indeed extraordinary. She glanced at the back of the old woman in black and others leaving, and raised the corner of her mouth with a slight smile. "You can actually hide your spiritual consciousness and aura, and even I almost deceived you. It's really amazing." Haha, the woman in black chuckled and shook her head, with a trace of disdain flashing in her eyes. "They are just a group of old guys lingering on. They don't have much life left. How long can they bounce around even if they don't die?" "Sister, do you want to catch up and kill these bastards?" the silver-haired woman asked with a smile. "Charming Tian Cheng." "Forget it, don't make matters worse." The woman in black glanced at her and said calmly, "Our task is to keep an eye on them. As for the rest, His Majesty will take care of it." "Okay," the silver-haired woman curled her lips, looking slightly disappointed. "I still want to teach them a lesson myself." As a member of the White Tiger clan who controls the killing power, she hates these evil demons to the core. Especially these so-called monks are not worthy of being called monks at all. In her eyes, this group of people were worse than monsters and were simply trash. But she also knew very well that the tasks assigned by His Majesty were the top priority. She would definitely not ruin His Majesty's plan for her own gain. Hearing this, the woman in black said calmly, "Let's go, let's follow them closely." The silver-haired woman nodded slightly. Then she waved her hand slightly, and saw a mysterious altar exuding the vicissitudes of life emerging silently at their feet. The altar is simple and elegant, with strange patterns carved on its surface, filled with a sense of vicissitudes of time, giving people a sense of desolation and solemnity. Immediately, the silver-haired woman and the black-clothed woman moved their jade feet slightly and stepped into the altar. Buzz! In an instant, the altar suddenly trembled violently. A mysterious and obscure wave spread and enveloped the surrounding areas. Ho! Immediately afterwards, a strange and high-pitched chirping sound came from around the altar, as if some kind of fierce bird was neighing and roaring, which was shocking. The next moment, a white tiger silhouette slowly rose from the altar. The white tiger's phantom has a white-gold color all over its body, and its huge body contains terrifying pressure that is suffocating. The moment it appeared, the whole world suddenly became dim. It was as if an invincible king had descended here, and people couldn't help but worship him, kneel on the ground, and tremble. "Let's go." As soon as the white tiger's shadow appeared, the silver-haired woman said immediately. Before she finished speaking, she took the lead in entering the white tiger's shadow and disappeared. Whoosh! The woman in black swayed slightly, turning into a phantom and rushing into the white tiger's shadow. Immediately afterwards, the white tiger's shadow quickly shrank, finally blending into the night and disappearing without a trace. At this time, under the leadership of the old woman in black and others, they finally arrived at the foot of a towering mountain range. "What are we doing here?" Looking at the familiar outline of the mountains, the other ancestors looked at each other in confusion. This secret realm was one they had explored before. Apart from the vicious aura and poisonous mist, there is nothing special. There were countless disciples and elders who died in this secret realm. In the end, the sect leaders were alarmed and a large number of disciples and elders were dispatched for support. In the end, it was the old woman in black, the Supreme Elder, who took action to completely suppress the secret realm. And now, why do they want to return to the secret realm again? The old woman in black had a gloomy look in her eyes. She ran out without answering. The others looked at each other and followed. After a while, they came to the sky above the valley and looked down. Their expressions became more solemn. The whole valley was shrouded in thick black fog. It seemed to be blocked, isolating the inside and the outside, and could not be penetrated. This black fog permeated every corner of the valley, making it full of gloomy and terrifying weird atmosphere. In the depths of the fog, there were faint bursts of creepy and weird roars. It was like an ancient tomb forest shrouded in darkness, weird and terrifying. The black fog here seems to be thicker than before. An old man frowned and said, full of fear. Indeed, it is more than 3 times thicker than before. What is in here? Aren't we going to the paradise? What are we doing here? Many ancestors started to speculate, becoming more and more curious. They were not the ones who suppressed the secret realm, so they didn't know about it. Only the old woman in black had a gleam in her eyes. Let's rest here first. The old woman in black took a deep breath, her expression became more cautious, and said, I still feel that something seems to be spying on us. Hearing this, the other ancestors all frowned and looked around involuntarily. Li Honglan, you don't have to be so nervous. An old man couldn't help but complain. They have practiced for so many years, and they have experienced countless dangers, but they have survived every time without any danger. Why should they act like they are facing a great enemy? The old woman in black narrowed her eyes, with a sharp edge in her eyes, and said in a deep voice, don't talk nonsense, enter it first. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In an instant, everyone sped up and rushed into the secret realm. In the unknown mysterious space. Suddenly, the silver-haired woman stopped. What's wrong? The black-clothed woman next to her asked in confusion. They entered a space secret realm. The silver-haired woman frowned slightly, and her eyes were cold. Space secret realm, the black-clothed woman was stunned. What are they doing in the secret realm? I don't know, but the internal space of this space secret realm is very large, and the white tiger altar should be able to enter. The silver-haired woman shook her head and said, let's go and take a look. Okay, the black-clothed woman nodded. At the same time, in the Qingtian Temple. The Qingtian Temple occupies a very large area, with tall buildings, ancient fragrance, and a fairy-like temperament. Lu Meng'er and others spent 2 hours and finally arrived inside the Qingtian Temple. The internal buildings of Qingtian Temple are huge, one after another, and each building exudes an ancient and vicissitudes of life. Look there. Suddenly, the young man in white pointed to the plaque hanging above the hall in the distance and said excitedly, Qingtian Palace. Lu Meng'er and others followed her guidance and saw a magnificent palace in their eyes. The palace is located on the edge of a cliff, surrounded by clouds and mist, like the top of the sky, sacred and extraordinary. What a beautiful place, Lu Meng'er exclaimed, her beautiful eyes widened with surprise. At this moment, the scene inside Qingtian Temple was very quiet, peaceful, as if no one lived there. Qingtian Temple has been destroyed and no longer exists at this moment. The purple-clothed man in a purple robe sighed, his eyes a little sad. Hearing the purple-clothed man's words, everyone's face couldn't help but dim, lowered their heads, and their eyes were wet. Although they saw the tragic battle with their own eyes not long ago, they still couldn't forget it in their hearts. Dakin's cruelty and bravery left a deep impression on everyone. From that moment on, they expected that Qingtian Temple would be destroyed, but they still felt inexplicably sad when they heard it from the purple-clothed man. Alas! Alas! A sigh sounded, and after a long time, they gradually recovered. Then they looked up at this strange and familiar palace. Sister Meng'er, do you think there will be opportunities and treasures here? At this time, the young man in white suddenly spoke, staring at Lu Meng'er expectantly. Let's go, since we are here, let's go in and take a look. Lu Meng'er smiled. The others also nodded in agreement. Although this palace makes people a little daunting, since they are here, they naturally have to see the situation. Hee, let's go in quickly. The young man in white grinned. He couldn't wait to see what opportunities and treasures there would be in this palace. Then everyone stepped onto the stairs and entered Qingtian Temple. This palace is huge, 100 feet high, occupying half of the entire mountain, magnificent and stunning. As they walked forward, they saw a straight and wide road leading to the Qingtian Palace. Along the way, there were various buildings. Everything here showed its former glory. But at this moment, there was a dead silence, without any breath of life. This is an empty and lonely palace. Everyone continued to walk forward, and finally came to the gate of Qingtian Palace. The door was ajar but not closed, and the scene inside could be clearly seen, which was desolate. As everyone walked, they looked around. Suddenly, the boy in white stopped, looked at a stone door, and said, "Sister Meng'er, look at that door quickly." Everyone looked in the direction of the finger of the young man in white and found that the stone gate had changed. There is a scroll carved on the stone door. The pattern is of a leaping dragon, which is lifelike. What is particularly eye-catching is that the word Qingtian is engraved on the lintel directly in front of the stone gate. This pattern seems to be exactly the same as the dragon pattern on the wall outside. The boy in white stared at the pattern and murmured, "Sister Meng'er, what do you think this pattern represents? Let's go. Go take a look." The man in purple took the lead and walked towards the stone gate. The boy in white also hurriedly followed. The others looked at each other and immediately chased after him without hesitation. Everyone gathered in front of the stone door and looked at it carefully, but they still couldn't understand the meaning of the pattern. Buzz, at this moment, the spiritual power in Lu Meng'er's body was circulating, and a strange wave filled the air. Then, she slowly stretched out her jade hand to touch the stone door. The moment she touched the dragon pattern, her face showed a confused expression and fell into a sluggish state. "Meng'er, what's wrong with you?" Seeing this, the man in purple asked in confusion. Hearing this, the young man in white and others all turned their attention to Lu Meng'er. They all felt that something was not right about Lu Meng'er, as if she had lost her soul. At this time, Lu Meng'er slowly opened her eyes, which were empty and without any focus. "Meng'er, are you okay?" the man in purple shouted again. The next moment, Lu Meng'er suddenly woke up, her pretty face turned pale instantly, and there were big beads of sweat on her forehead. At that moment, she felt like there was an extra memory in her mind, and there were many strange and distant things in her memory. She couldn't even tell who was herself and who was someone else. Where is this?" Lu Meng'er looked around and asked doubtfully, "Why am I here?" "Sister Meng'er, are you okay?" the boy in white asked worriedly. "Sister Meng'er, don't you recognize me?" Who am I?" Lu Meng'er asked doubtfully. As soon as these words came out, the man in purple was stunned. How could this happen? Their expressions were stiff, as if they had seen a ghost. Just now I saw Lu Meng'er immersed in that pattern. How come she turned into a completely different person in the blink of an eye? They didn't know what happened, so they could only look at Lu Meng'er with strange eyes. What secret is hidden in this pattern? The man in purple frowned and thought, looking extremely confused. Lu Meng'er shook her head and said, "I don't know what happened. I always feel like I had a dream that lasted for tens of thousands of years, and then I woke up in darkness." Tens of thousands of years of dreams. The man in purple and others became more and more confused, their minds filled with doubts. They couldn't understand what Lu Meng'er was talking about, let alone what happened. I remembered. Suddenly, Lu Meng'er's beautiful eyes widened, her delicate body trembled, and she screamed, "It's him! It must be him! At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 549. He? Who is he? Everyone was confused. The purple-clothed man frowned and said, Men-er, who are you talking about? I don't know who he is, I just have a very familiar feeling. Lu Men-er tried to calm down, but she was still panicked. Sister Men-er, are you scared? The white-clothed boy quickly supported Lu Men-er and comforted her. Lu Men-er took a few deep breaths, stabilized a little, smiled bitterly, and said, Sorry, I'm a little out of control. What happened? The purple-clothed man frowned. Lu Men-er shook her head and smiled bitterly, This matter is too weird, I can't explain it clearly for a while. In that memory, she saw many unfamiliar scenes. And she also saw a figure, a very scary and terrifying existence. This figure gave her the feeling of the Lord of the Nine Skies, in charge of the laws of the world, above all living beings, overlooking all living beings, full of majesty and dignity. Lu Men-er really couldn't imagine how long such a strong man had survived. Perhaps it was billions of years, or perhaps even longer. In short, it was definitely a legendary existence. Who is he? Lu Men-er was filled with curiosity. But unfortunately, she could not see the appearance of that existence. In Lu Men-er's memory, that figure always stood proudly in the clouds with his hands behind his back. Even though Lu Men-er tried her best to look up, she could not see his appearance clearly. Sister Men-er, what happened? The young man in white asked. Lu Men-er shook her head and said, I'm just a little tired, I'll be fine after a rest. So that's it. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Although they didn't know what happened to Lu Men-er, they were relieved to see that she was fine. Men-er, take a rest first, and we will continue to study the stone gate. The man in purple smiled faintly. Lu Men-er nodded slightly and said, Well, thank you for your concern, I will be fine in a while. After she finished speaking, she ignored the others and walked straight to Qingtian Palace. The white-clothed teenagers looked at each other and followed. They were still very curious about who Lu Men-er was talking about. Sister Men-er, are you sure you don't need to rest? The white-clothed teenager asked cautiously. I'm fine, don't worry. Lu Men-er waved her hand gently. Lu Men-er walked very slowly, and every step was extremely cautious, as if she was afraid of stepping on something. Soon, everyone entered the interior of Qingtian Palace. What caught everyone's eyes was a magnificent hall filled with rich and powerful fluctuations of vitality. This seems to be a treasure land for cultivation. The purple-clothed man glanced at the hall, his eyes lit up, what a pure spiritual energy. It's unbelievable that just a stone room is more powerful than the spiritual veins outside. The white-clothed teenager was very excited and wanted to practice now. However, at this moment, a violent and unparalleled pressure swept through the entire Qingtian Palace, causing everyone's heart to twitch violently and almost suffocate. What's going on? Lu Men-er stopped and raised her head in horror. Under that domineering pressure, Lu Men-er felt an inexplicable fear and awe. Look, what is that? The white-clothed boy pointed at the tallest building in the Qingtian Palace and said in shock. At this moment, everyone looked in the direction of the white-clothed boy's finger. When they saw that scene, they were all stunned. Because they saw a tall figure standing at the top, looking down on the world like a king. It was a man in black, with a tall figure, long hair draped over his shoulders, and a group of bright stars all over his body, exuding a vast and majestic momentum. He put his hands behind his back and looked down at the entire Qingtian Palace from a high place, with deep eyes, as if he could see through the ages. This is a lonely and desolate figure, making the empty and silent hall seem particularly cold. However, the overwhelming power he exudes is enough to scare anyone. What a strong aura! Who is this guy? He can release such a terrible aura. Didn't the Supreme Elder of Qingtian Temple run away? How come such a strong man appeared again? The power displayed by this guy just now is so weird that people can't help but tremble. Who is he? So scary. What is the cultivation level of this guy? Isn't he the emperor? It shouldn't be possible. Everyone was terrified and guessed the identity of the man in black. But what they didn't notice was that when Lu Meng'er saw the man in black, her body suddenly stiffened, her beautiful face was full of astonishment, and her beautiful eyes showed extreme shock and suspicion. This figure is very similar to the one she saw in her dream, exactly the same. Meng'er, what's wrong with you? Seeing this, the man in purple asked. Hearing this, the young man in white and others looked at Lu Meng'er. However, Lu Meng'er was still stunned, staring at the man in black on the top of Qingtian Palace, and didn't hear the voice of the man in purple at all. Hey, the man in purple pushed Lu Meng'er. Meng'er, Sister Meng'er, the young man in white shouted anxiously. At this time, Lu Meng'er woke up from her shock and then raised her head suddenly. At this time, she happened to meet the eyes of the man in black. It really looks like him, Lu Meng'er whispered to herself, and a storm was rising in her heart. Sister Meng'er, who were you talking to just now? The purple-clothed man asked suspiciously. Nothing. Lu Meng'er gathered her thoughts, changed the subject, and looked at the tallest building in Qingtian Palace. At this moment, she was more and more sure that the man in black was related to the figure in her dream. Who is he? Lu Meng'er guessed secretly in her heart, and many pictures appeared in her mind, but she couldn't capture them. Just as she was guessing in her heart, a cold and majestic voice sounded faintly in her ears. You are a little smart. You found this place before me. How is it? What did you gain? Qin Mu's cold and slightly playful voice spread to every corner of Qingtian Palace. The sudden voice made Lu Meng'er's heart tremble fiercely, and her pretty face turned pale. Are you, the Lord of the Great Qin? Lu Meng'er widened her eyes and was extremely shocked. Although she had never seen the Lord of the Great Qin, she was very familiar with this voice, exactly the same as the voice she heard in Qingxi City. Who else could it be but the Lord of the Great Qin? Lu Meng'er felt her head explode with a buzz, and her hands and feet instantly became cold. She never expected to see the Lord of the Great Qin in this place. The purple-clothed man and others also changed their expressions, trembling in panic. Oh no, we are in trouble, run, the white-clothed boy screamed, scared to death. This is a big trouble. The purple-clothed man also panicked, and ran without thinking. Run. In an instant, everyone was in chaos. However, just as they were about to rush out of Qingtian Palace, a piercing cold suddenly spread, completely imprisoning them. At this moment, they were like sculptures, unable to move at all. What should I do? I can't move. Don't panic, stay calm. Since the Great Qin Lord doesn't kill us, it means he doesn't plan to kill us all for the time being. As long as we show our value, he will definitely reward us. That's right, don't be afraid. The purple-clothed man and the others tried their best to calm themselves down. However, they couldn't calm down at all. At this moment, their bodies kept shaking, and their foreheads were already covered with cold sweat. They even suspected that if they were a second later, they would be frozen into ice. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? At this moment, a cold laugh suddenly came into their ears. Hearing this, the purple-clothed man and others trembled violently. They turned their heads and found that the Great Qin Lord was slowly walking towards them. Every time he got closer, the icy temperature increased several times. Plop. Finally, the white-clothed boy and others couldn't bear this terrifying pressure, and they all knelt down. At this moment, the young man in white felt like he had fallen into the 9 netherworld purgatory, his body numb from the cold. Why are you in such a hurry? Are you so afraid of me? Qin Mu said with a cold smile. He stopped in front of the young man in white and looked down at him. Your Majesty, spare my life, the young man in white kowtowed tremblingly, shivering all over, and almost fainted. Qingtian Temple is owned by the Qin dynasty. You broke into this place without permission. Don't you have any explanation? Qin Mu snorted coldly, his voice seemed to come from the nine netherworld, revealing a heart-pounding coldness, which made the young man in white even more panicked. Please forgive me, Your Majesty. We know we are wrong. Please spare my life, Your Majesty. The young man in white kowtowed desperately, and his voice was full of tears. The man in purple gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, Your Majesty, I am Yan Feng, the young master of the Holy Fire sect, not a disciple of Qingtian Temple. Oh! Holy Fire sect, Qin Mu frowned slightly. Yan Feng quickly added, Your Majesty, we just passed by the outer periphery of Qingtian Palace and accidentally broke into this place. We will leave immediately. That's right, Your Majesty, we just strayed in, not intentionally. The other two young men saluted respectfully, their faces full of fear. Strayed in? Do you think I'm stupid? Qin Mu sneered, with an evil arc at the corner of his mouth. Don't dare! The three shook their heads. Qin Mu ignored them and continued to walk forward. The cold breath on his body became stronger and stronger. The temperature of the space dropped to 0. The young man in white shivered as if he had fallen into an abyss. At this moment, Qin Mu was only half a meter away from the young man in white, staring at him with cold eyes. Gililu. The young man in white swallowed his saliva with difficulty, his face as pale as paper. Your Majesty, in fact, we didn't stray in. We just want to find the treasures here and present them to Your Majesty, the young man in white shouted in fear, fearing that Qin Mu would destroy them in anger. He was sure that if he didn't speak again, he would die. Treasure, Qin Mu showed a half smile. Your Majesty, we have no ill intentions. The treasures here belong to you, Your Majesty. We just want to help you, the young man in white hurriedly said. Then did you find it? Qin Mu sneered, his eyes still staring at them, and the cold breath on his body became stronger. Your Majesty, we. The young man in white hesitated and couldn't speak, with a little embarrassment on his face. Qin Mu looked at these people and lost interest in continuing the conversation. He was ready to kill them. These people were too weak. Keeping them would be useless to Dakin. Qin Mu raised his palm and slapped it lightly. A vast and majestic spiritual power swept out and directly covered the entire hall. Boom! With a deafening roar, the huge and majestic hall was instantly turned into ruins, and smoke and dust rolled. The young man in white was blown away and fell to the ground with serious injuries. The screams continued. Ah! The shrill and painful screams echoed in the hall. Qin Mu turned his hand again. Boom! Bang! In an instant, the young man in white and several others exploded, blood and flesh flew everywhere, and turned into fragments and scattered all over the ground. In the blink of an eye, the hall that was originally the source of Taoism instantly turned into a Shura field, bloody and brutal. Lu Meng'er stood there in a daze, her beautiful eyes widened, her body trembled violently, and her heart beat violently, as if it would jump out of her throat at any time. So vicious. Lu Meng'er's pretty face turned pale, and her eyes were misty. Qin Mu's actions made her feel like she was in a sea of blood and corpses, and she was filled with fear and dread. When Qin Mu's eyes fell on her, Lu Meng'er woke up from a dream, and her heart trembled violently. She knew her situation very well. If she wanted to survive, she had to show her value. Your Majesty, at this time, she looked directly at Qin Mu and said in a trembling voice, Your Majesty, you can't kill me. Oh, Qin Mu raised his eyebrows and smiled, why? Lu Meng'er took a deep breath and said quickly, I know a secret, please spare my life, Your Majesty. Oh, hearing this, Qin Mu's eyes flashed with a gleam of brilliance, and asked with interest, tell me about it. Lu Meng'er did not drag her feet at all, and hurriedly said, Your Majesty, I just got a memory, I seem to have seen you a long time ago. A long time, Qin Mu was slightly stunned, and then asked again, what kind of memory? The memory is very vague, but I can vaguely feel that you are a noble emperor. Lu Meng'er thought for a moment and whispered. Qin Mu nodded slightly, smiled and asked, when did that happen? Hearing this, Lu Meng'er fell into silence, and a picture emerged in her mind. A man in a dragon robe and with a majestic aura stood on the clouds, looking down on all living beings, as if everything was under control. Your Majesty, your figure is the same as the person in the picture, but I can't see it clearly. I'm not sure it's you. Lu Meng'er said in a low voice, not sure. Then how did you get that memory? Qin Mu asked. Lu Meng'er lowered her head and said, I can tell your Majesty, but Meng'er has something to ask. Tell me, Qin Mu said lightly. Lu Meng'er took a deep breath, suddenly knelt down, and said seriously, Meng'er wants to follow your Majesty. Why do you have this idea? Qin Mu asked. Lu Meng'er hesitated for a moment, then mustered up her courage and all her strength, and shouted, because you are the best king I have ever seen, no one is more suitable to be an emperor than you. Ha. Hearing this, Qin Mu couldn't help laughing, then shook his head and said, you know, in the eyes of others, I have always been the image of a tyrant. Lu Meng'er was speechless. But I agree, Qin Mu said with a smile. Lu Meng'er was overjoyed and quickly thanked him, thank you, your Majesty, for your gift. Lu Meng'er was very excited and secretly happy in her heart. This might be the most correct decision she has made in her life. Qin Mu asked again, tell me, how did you get the memory? Lu Meng'er sorted out her mood, calmed down her inner ecstasy, and said, your Majesty, please follow me. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 550. After saying this, Lu Meng'er turned around and walked out of the palace, and Qin Mu followed slowly. The two of them walked in the silent and dark hall. The surroundings were empty and eerie, except for the two of them. Your Majesty, I just touched the stone door and got that memory. Lu Meng'er pointed to the stone door in the hall and explained. Oh, Qin Mu looked at Shimin and frowned. This stone door exuded an ancient and vicissitudes of atmosphere, giving him a very uncomfortable feeling. Go and activate Shimin, Qin Mu commanded Lu Meng'er unceremoniously. Lu Meng'er's mouth twitched slightly. But she didn't dare to hesitate and acted according to Qin Mu's instructions. Lu Meng'er came to the front of the stone gate and placed her hands on the stone gate. Buzz dash. Lu Meng'er urged spiritual power to be injected into the stone gate, but found that it could not shake it at all. On the other hand, Shimin was motionless, not even a ripple was produced. Strange, why can't this stone door be activated? Lu Meng'er frowned more and more. Did she think wrong? Your Majesty, Lu Meng'er tried to communicate with Qin Mu and said, Your Majesty, this stone door seems to be a dead thing. I can't move it. Try again, Qin Mu said calmly. Yes, Lu Meng'er nodded in agreement. Lu Meng'er took out a breath and mobilized her spiritual power to input into Shimin, but it still didn't work. Buzz buzz. Lu Meng'er frantically injected spiritual power, but the result was the same. Your Majesty, this stone door seems to have the ability to imprison spiritual power, but I can't activate it at all, Lu Meng'er said with a bitter smile. Really? Qin Mu narrowed his eyes slightly and said, keep trying. Lu Meng'er gritted her teeth, circulated the spiritual power in her body, and poured it into the stone gate like crazy, but it still had no effect. Damn it! What did I do wrong? Lu Meng'er had bead-sized beads of sweat on her forehead, her face full of confusion. At this moment, Qin Mu said, since this method is useless, then you should try another method and try it with the power of the soul. Use the power of the soul. Lu Meng'er's beautiful eyes suddenly widened a bit and said, Your Majesty, the power of the soul is very fragile. If you use it excessively, it can easily damage the root. Damage to the soul will have serious consequences, ranging from stagnant cultivation to never being able to advance, or even being unable to reach the pinnacle of martial arts for life. In severe cases, it may even lead to confusion, loss of reason and dementia, and completely reduce you to a useless person. Therefore, no one will easily use the power of the soul unless they have no choice. Although she didn't know why she suddenly had this inexplicable memory, she couldn't risk her life. Qin Mu raised his eyes and glanced at her, and said indifferently, "This is your last chance." Hearing this, Lu Menger's body trembled slightly, her face turned pale, she bit her red lips and said, "Your Majesty, Menger understands." After the words fell, Lu Menger closed her eyes, concentrated her mind, suppressed the fear in her heart, and slowly mobilized the power of her soul to surge towards the right eyebrow. Aha! The next second, Lu Menger closed her eyes, and a ray of soul power floated out from the center of her eyebrows, shot toward the stone door, and merged into it. However, the stone gate did not change at all. It stood in place like a stone sculpture, showing no reaction. "Your Majesty, it still doesn't work." Lu Menger's pretty face was full of worry and she was anxious. She was afraid that she would be abandoned because she had not made a difference. As soon as she thought of this, Lu Menger became more and more frightened, and a strong sense of fear arose in her heart. Without waiting for Qin Mu's instructions, she immediately mobilized the power of her soul and shot at the stone gate again. Lu Menger prayed silently in her heart, hoping to succeed again. Bang! However, the next moment, the stone door shook suddenly, and Lu Menger almost fell to the ground in fright. Lu Menger's pretty face turned pale, she spat out a mouthful of blood, her body shook violently for several times, and she was obviously severely injured. At this moment, Lu Menger froze in place, her pretty face was instantly wet with cold sweat, and she looked extremely painful. The power of her soul was too weak, and even though she tried her best, she could not move the stone tablet. After a while, the power of the soul was exhausted and turned into nothingness and dissipated in the air. At this time, Lu Menger was already dripping with sweat, sitting on the ground exhausted, her breath was weak, and her mental state was extremely bad. She never expected that the stone door would suddenly shake and injure her. Lu Menger wiped away the blood that overflowed from the corner of her mouth and said with difficulty, Your Majesty, I'm useless." Lu Menger's voice was intermittent, as if she had exhausted all her soul power, which made people sympathize. "It's okay, I don't blame you," Qin Mu responded calmly. Hearing this, Lu Menger breathed a sigh of relief. "Back off," Qin Mu said. "Yes," Lu Menger responded respectfully, and then quickly stepped aside. After Lu Menger left, Qin Mu stepped towards the stone door. Then he stretched out his hand and put it on the stone door. With a thought, the majestic power of the soul swept out and violently bombarded the stone door. Boom! In an instant, the whole hall shook, dust flew up, and smoke filled the air. He opened his arms, and the soul in his body flowed out like a tide, rushing towards the ancient and thick stone door. Under Qin Mu's all-out offensive, the vibration frequency of the ancient stone gate gradually increased, a faint golden light appeared on the surface, and ripples appeared. At this moment, Lu Menger was surprised. What's going on? It actually changed color. On the surface of the stone door, golden lines flowed, very gorgeous, like flowers blooming. Then, a wisp of strange runes spread out from all over the stone door, gradually condensing into a strange golden pattern. On the pattern, there are 4 lines intertwined and entangled, like a spider web, and flashing dazzling golden light, which is breathtaking and has a strong visual impact. Hiss! Lu Menger took a breath of cold air, her heart thumped wildly, and her hair stood up all over her body. Lu Menger widened her eyes and stared at the strange pattern that appeared on the stone door in a daze, as if her mind was bombed by thunder and lightning. This strange and familiar feeling came again. Swoosh! The moment the strange pattern was formed, the whole stone door suddenly burst into brilliant golden light, and then the stone door slowly floated up. The strange pattern on the stone door was suspended above Qin Mu's head, and then turned into a beam of golden light, trying to drill into Qin Mu's head. Qin Mu frowned and cursed in his heart, "What the hell? You actually want to get into my body?" "Suppress," Qin Mu shouted, and the powerful and domineering soul power burst out, fiercely hitting the strange pattern. Buzz! The strange pattern struggled violently, and the golden light became more and more dazzling, but it could not escape Qin Mu's control. "Collect it for me," Qin Mu roared, and the soul power squeezed the golden light frantically, trying to crush it. The golden light trembled violently, releasing a brighter golden light to resist the squeeze and pull of the soul power. "Humph! A mere defective soul power dares to compete with me? It's really looking for death," Qin Muzan sneered, and the power of consciousness squeezed more fiercely. Qin Mu's soul power was much stronger than Lu Meng'er's, and he completely took the upper hand, wrapped the golden light tightly, and gradually forced it back to the stone gate. Just as Qin Mu was about to imprison the golden light, the strange pattern suddenly turned into a tiny golden light and quickly fled. "Want to run? Stop for me," Qin Mu was furious, and the power of his spiritual consciousness poured out and chased after it. In an instant, the strange pattern with golden light spots wanted to fly out of the hall and try to escape from here. "Where are you running?" Qin Mu shouted coldly and chased after it with all his strength. "Damn you, don't go too far," the strange pattern roared angrily. "Hee, those guys in Qingtian Temple want to use you to deal with me. It's so stupid. I will make you disappear today," Qin Mu sneered disdainfully. Although Qin Mu didn't know what this thing was, he was sure that it was not a good thing. This kind of evil thing must be eliminated as soon as possible, otherwise it will be a disaster sooner or later. Buzz buzz buzz. The speed of both reached its peak, so fast that it was almost invisible to the naked eye, and strong hurricanes were set off wherever they passed. Qin Mu tried his best to chase him, his speed was getting faster and faster, and the distance was gradually shortened. "You can't run away," Qin Mu shouted coldly, and the power of his soul surged and madly poured into his right hand. Shua! Qin Mu swung his sword mercilessly, and the dazzling sword rainbow slashed down with the power to break the sky, and chopped down with the power to destroy the world. In the blink of an eye, the sword rainbow chopped fiercely on the golden light, and a dull loud noise suddenly resounded through the sky, and the terrifying sword energy raged, suffocating. Qin Mu's strength was so terrifying that a sword chopped out, enough to split the mountains and rivers, destroy thousands of people, and the power was terrifying. Boom! The sword rainbow chopped down, with a loud bang, deafening, and the violent aftermath shook the 8 directions. The surrounding trees collapsed, and the grass and trees flew. The strange pattern was hit hard and fled to the distance again, faster. Qin Mu frowned slightly, and a solemn look appeared on his face. He didn't expect that the strange pattern could actually withstand his attack. What a strange thing, Qin Mu was shocked. The strange pattern contained strange power, and the defense was extremely terrifying. "But you have come to my door, can I still do nothing to you?" Qin Mu smiled coldly, and the power of his soul was pushed to the extreme. Qin Mu swung his sword repeatedly, and each sword fell with destructive sword energy, with tremendous power. Seeing this scene, Lu Meng'er was horrified, her heart beat faster, she felt like a fool, standing there staring. Boom! Qin Mu kept swinging his sword, and each sword fell with a devastating force, and the deafening explosion sounded one after another, shocking people. Every time Qin Mu's sword fell, the strange pattern would dim a little. In a moment, Qin Mu chopped hundreds of swords, and the strange pattern was beaten all over. Even the speed of escape slowed down significantly, as if it encountered great resistance. It was obvious that it could not hold on any longer. Qin Mu flicked his fingers, and the power of the soul swept out, quickly wrapped the strange pattern, and forcibly refined it. The strange pattern struggled frantically, but it could not get rid of Qin Mu's control at all. Let me go. You let me go. I am the spirit of the immortal weapon. If you dare to refine me, even the emperor can't bear the consequences, the strange pattern shouted angrily. Really? Then I am really scared. Qin Mu grinned and sneered, and the power of the soul continued to refine. Ah, it hurts. Stop it. You will be punished. The miserable scream spread throughout the void. I have never done anything wrong, how can there be retribution? Qin Mu sneered playfully. Qin Mu didn't understand what it said at all, but he guessed that this strange pattern was not an ordinary thing. If he could refine it, it would definitely be of great benefit to him. Qin Mu kept swinging his sword and slashing, one sword after another, with dense and sharp sword energy slashing down crazily. Ah! The desolate and sorrowful wail, mixed with the stern begging for mercy, the strange pattern at this time is like the fish waiting to be slaughtered on the chopping board. The weird patterns twist and change crazily, as if they will disappear at any time. Asshole! You will kill me if you do this. Let me go quickly, otherwise you will be haunted by my resentment for the rest of your life. You will never be reincarnated, the strange pattern angrily shouted. Who are you trying to scare? Qin Mu said with a mocking smile. Since you are the spirit of the immortal weapon, then surrender to me obediently. Don't even think about it. I would rather die than surrender to you. I curse you to die badly, the strange pattern roared crazily. I want to see how you made me die so badly, Qin Mu said with a gloomy face. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Mu immediately used the soul capturing technique. His eyes flashed with blue runes, strange patterns appeared all over his body, and he was twitching and feeling listless. Ah, I would rather die together than give in to you. The strange pattern roared angrily, and immediately rose into the sky, frantically hitting the divine seal, trying to break through the seal and escape. Boom boom boom. The strange patterns collided crazily, making deafening explosions, but the divine seal remained extremely strong and undamaged. The power of the strange pattern has been weakened to the extreme, and it is simply vulnerable. Stop struggling, your resistance will only make you more painful, Qin Mu said expressionlessly, his eyes flashing coldly. Qin Mu swung his long sword and slashed down. The dazzling sword rainbow tore through the darkness and slashed down with the power of destruction for eternity, instantly covering it with strange patterns. Ah! Bang! Crack! Accompanied by a hysterical scream, the strange pattern exploded on the spot under the violent collision of the sword rainbow. Finally, it turned into a wisp of black shadow and appeared in front of Qin Mu. I lost to a lowly human ant. I'm so unwilling, weird pattern roared angrily. Ant, Qin Mu shook his head and said indifferently, in my eyes, you are just an ant. Humph, weird pattern snorted and roared ferociously, you humble human race, you can't kill me. Our grudges cannot end here. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Mu slapped him directly. The crisp and powerful explosion was as deafening as thunder. The terrifying power was unparalleled, and the strange patterns were directly slapped into the soil. Buzz. The strange pattern trembled violently, endless anger and hatred, madness eroding its sanity. I want to kill everyone who has anything to do with you, including your relatives and friends, weird pattern roared through gritted teeth. Snap. Qin Mu reached into the soil with his right hand and pulled out the strange pattern. Do you think I can't kill you? Qin Mu asked with a sneer. Ha ha ha. Stupid human race, not only can you not kill me, but you will also increase my strength. When I absorb enough power, I will make you pay the price. The strange pattern laughed wildly, as if it had seen the hope of revenge. Qin Mu slowly loosened his fingers and threw away the strange pattern. He suddenly smiled and said lightly, I know what you are. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Buletin Len. Chapter 551. The black shadow raised his head coldly and arrogantly, and sneered. Humph. I am the spirit of an immortal weapon, and I have traveled around the world for tens of thousands of years. What scenes have I not seen before? No need to pretend anymore. You are not a fairy spirit at all. You are just the resentment condensed by a resentful spirit. Do you really think of yourself as a dish? Xuanhuan sneered. Nonsense. It's such nonsense. I am the spirit of an immortal weapon, how can I be a resentful spirit? Black Shadow angrily yelled. Xuanhuan curled his lips and sneered, although the resentment of the resentful spirit is indelible, it will not lead to a strange appearance like you. It seems that you have devoured a lot of blood essence over the years. You. Black Shadow was speechless. Xuanhuan continued, you have been devouring essence and blood for so many years, and you even did not hesitate to tell the people of Qingtian Temple about this cultivation method. It must be to reshape your body and restore your cultivation, right? You, how did you know? The Black Shadow said in horror, looking at Xuanhuan in disbelief. Xuanhuan smiled lightly and said, because the aura on your body is exactly the same as that on Daizai Qingtian Temple. And you wanted to take my body the moment you saw me. This means it is self-evident, right? The Black Shadow transformed by the strange pattern suddenly fell silent. After a moment, a cold voice sounded, so that's it? You are indeed very sharp. You are indeed the one who can force the elders of Qingtian Temple back. Xuanhuan's mouth twitched, everyone can guess this. But so what if you know, Weird Pattern said disdainfully. Xuanhuan spread his hands, shrugged and said, I can't help it. I can't let a devil like you cause trouble outside. The more calm Xuanhuan looked, the more fearful Haiying became. Boy, what do you want? The Black Shadow asked solemnly, it always felt that Xuanhuan had bad intentions. I'm curious, why did they leave you here alone? Xuanhuan asked, a little confused about this matter. The Black Shadow smiled coldly, those old immortals, after getting my cultivation method, crossed the river and demolished the bridge, imprisoning me here to attract your attention, so that they can escape, a group of despicable guys, they all deserve to die. Speaking of this, he became very angry. Originally, he thought that it was cruel enough for those Qingtian Temple elders to use their own disciples as bait. Unexpectedly, they even abandoned themselves, and said that they only needed to set a boundary with him, so that even if they were caught in the future, there would be absolutely no evidence. They were really a bunch of selfish guys who only cared about themselves. Upon hearing these words, Xuanhuan suddenly realized that he seemed to have been abandoned. Xuanhuan shrugged his shoulders and said, so that's it? You're quite pitiful to meet such a greedy and selfish guy. Ha ha. Aren't these you humans? Black Shadow sneered. Xuanhuan spread his hands and said, you are wrong. I am definitely not a greedy and selfish person. I never do anything for the sake of greed. Oh? What's that for? Black Shadow asked. For the innocence, kindness, and justice in my heart, Xuanhuan said solemnly, his deep eyes glowing with justice. Ha ha ha, Haiying couldn't help laughing when he heard Xuanhuan's words. Xuanhuan looked puzzled and asked, did I make a mistake? You humans do have a strong heart, but you lack a sense of justice, the Black Shadow sneered, you obviously want my skills, but you find all kinds of excuses. I don't need your skills, I just want to know about the other world, Xuanhuan said seriously, as long as you are willing to tell me, I will spare your life. Hearing this, Haiying's usual calmness disappeared instantly. He stared at Xuanhuan in shock and asked, what about the other world? Do you know about the other world? Who are you? You don't need to worry about who I am, I just want to know what happened in the other world, Xuanhuan asked. Another world, Weird Pattern frowned slightly, looking very confused and seemed to be stuck in memories. After a moment, the Black Shadow suddenly became excited and said angrily, "You can't even expect to get any information from me. I will never tell you." The Black Shadow struggled wildly, trying to escape Qin Mu's control, but it never moved. Qin Mu stared at it calmly and said, "Do you think you can hide it from me? If I want to know, I can always find out. Stop your delusions." "I will never say that," Black Shadow shouted angrily, struggling desperately. "I'm not asking for your opinion, but ordering you." Qin Mu stared at the Black Shadow with cold eyes. "Why should I tell you?" Black Shadow sneered. "With my strength," Qin Mu said with a faint smile. He exuded a dominating aura in the understatement, like a peerless immortal emperor who ruled the world, which was awe-inspiring. Feeling the domineering and unparalleled aura, the Black Shadow became completely quiet, and his expression changed unpredictably. "You only have a chance to survive if you tell me," Qin Mu said calmly. "Do you think I will believe you?" Black Shadow asked mockingly, obviously not believing what Qin Mu said. "You have to believe it or not," Qin Mu said domineeringly and forcefully. "Ha!" Black Shadow sneered contemptuously, "the evil nature of you humans is too terrible, I don't believe you." Qin Mu shook his head and said, "I don't like nonsense." Hearing this, the Black Shadow trembled suddenly, a trace of panic appeared in his eyes, and then he calmed down again. "Want to know about another world?" Black Shadow sneered, "that is a world full of evil and killing. It is twisted and dirty. It is 100 times crueler than your world. It is even uglier. If you went to that world, you would never want to stay," Black Shadow said firmly. "You should tell me, what happened? Maybe I can consider saving your life," Qin Mu said with a faint smile, quite patiently. The shadow hesitated for a moment, and finally said, "Promise to let me go first." "Okay, I promise you, but the prerequisite is that you tell me," Qin Mu said cheerfully. The Black Shadow sneered, "Huh, it's not that easy. Unless you make an oath? Otherwise, how can I believe you?" "No problem, I will make an oath when you finish speaking." Qin Mu shrugged his shoulders with a completely indifferent attitude. He had originally planned to cheat. Seeing Qin Mu's unconcerned look, Haiying suddenly became anxious and quickly urged, "Quick! Make an oath, or I won't tell you." "Don't worry, I always keep my promises," Qin Mu said calmly, still ignoring the Black Shadow. "Bastard, despicable villain," Black Shadow cursed angrily, feeling extremely aggrieved. He never expected that he would fall into the hands of such a cunning, despicable human being. Haiying complained in his heart and said helplessly, forget it. You will die sooner or later anyway, so there is no harm in telling you. That world is called the Netherworld, a world of death and silence. I was originally a resentful spirit in the Netherworld. Tens of thousands of years ago, the Netherworld suddenly exploded and destroyed, but I escaped by luck and entered your world," Black Shadow explained. "The Netherworld exploded," Qin Mu was slightly stunned. "Yes, that disaster was so tragic that the entire Netherworld exploded, forming an endless void storm." Black Shadow slowly recounted, his tone full of grief. "Wait a minute, how was the Netherworld destroyed?" Qin Mu interrupted and asked. "It is said that it was because the king of Netherworld discovered a secret treasure, which resulted in attracting a terrifying enemy, causing the entire world to collapse and be destroyed." The shadow became more and more excited as he spoke, even crying in his voice, "King of Netherworld is the greatest existence I have ever seen. It was he who changed the world and gave it a new lease of life. But it's a pity that he provoked an existence that he couldn't afford to offend, which led to his fall." The Black Shadow said sadly, "That guy is very powerful, stronger than the Nether King's imagination. He smashed the Netherworld to pieces, and then swallowed the Netherworld." Listening to the Black Shadow's narration, Qin Mu was silent for a moment and whispered, What kind of strength does that person have? I don't know either. Haiying sighed helplessly, the disaster happened so suddenly and terribly. I was frightened. I only remember that the man's name seemed to be. At this point, the shadow paused, seeming to be lost in memories. Looking at the confused expression of the black shadow, Xuanhuan raised his eyebrows and said, "What's his name?" "I don't know either. I just heard King Netherworld call him God Lord." The black shadow shook his head. Xuanhuan frowned slightly and murmured to himself, "God Lord." Xuanhuan naturally felt nothing. For him, the Netherworld had nothing to do with him. God Lord. Xuanhuan's mouth curved. He always felt that there was some connection between this divine master and the scene that Xuanhuan saw back then. "Go on." Xuanhuan calmed down his emotions and said calmly. "Okay." Black Shadow nodded, and continued, "The strength of that God Lord is too terrifying. King Netherworld and countless strong men have all died in battle. No matter how powerful the master is, they will only be killed instantly when they encounter him. He is simply invincible. No one can stop its existence." Xuanhuan nodded slightly, with a solemn expression. He was able to kill all the strong men instantly. This kind of strength was indeed terrifying. In the end, the God Lord disappeared, and the Netherworld turned into a blood mist. No trace was left, and the catastrophe gradually subsided. The Black Shadow sighed. "Where is the Divine Lord?" Xuanhuan asked. "I don't know. I don't know the specific situation. I only know that the Netherworld suffered a horrific attack. That attack penetrated the Netherworld and caused it to be shattered." The shadow sighed, his expression revealing sadness. "Why did the Divine Lord attack the Netherworld?" Xuanhuan asked again, his eyes shining brightly. "I don't know." Black Shadow shook his head, and then said, "Why the God Lord attacked the Netherworld, it is impossible to find out the reason. After all, the Netherworld is broken and cannot be restored." Xuanhuan took a deep look at Haiying and did not continue to dwell on this topic. "You haven't agreed to my request yet," Black Shadow said suddenly. Xuanhuan's eyes flickered, then he patted the Black Shadow on the shoulder with a smile, and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I am not an ungrateful person. Since I promised to save you, I will definitely let you go." "Real?" Black Shadow said in surprise, with a bright smile on his face. "Of course it's true." Xuanhuan smiled calmly, and then added, "Don't forget, I am the human emperor, and I keep my word." Hearing Xuanhuan's assurance, Haiying felt relieved and completely relieved. "Then how are you going to arrange for me?" Black Shadow asked expectantly. "Of course." Xuanhuan raised the corners of his mouth, revealing a sinister smile, "I will make you into a puppet." The Black Shadow's pupils shrank suddenly, staring at Xuanhuan with a shocked face, and said tremblingly, What did you just say?" "Are you deaf?" Xuanhuan sneered, "I said I would make you into a puppet." "No. You lied to me. You are not a human emperor at all. You are a devil. You lied to me." The Black Shadow suddenly roared sharply, shouting hysterically, and its face was twisted ferociously, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Xuanhuan's eyes were as dark as ink, with a cold murderous intent, which made the Black Shadow feel like he was falling into the abyss, and his whole body was cold. The Black Shadow was stiff and trembling, as if he had fallen into the abyss, desperate and suffocating. What do you want to do?" the Black Shadow said fearfully. "Don't come over. Get out of my way." The Black Shadow struggled desperately, trying to get rid of Xuanhuan's control, but to no avail. Xuanhuan's eyes were indifferent, and he walked slowly towards the Black Shadow. Every time he took a step, the Black Shadow couldn't help but retreat. "No. Don't come over," the Black Shadow struggled frantically, his eyes bulged, and his face was full of fear. Nothing could help. The next moment, a hand grabbed the Black Shadow's neck and lifted it up. Xuanhuan looked down at the Black Shadow, A strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he shouted, "Suppress." Qin Mu waved his right arm, and the majestic soul power poured out, pouring fiercely into the black shadow's mind. Boom! As the soul power surged, it burst out like a mountain torrent, instantly destroying the black shadow's will. The black shadow's body trembled violently, screamed in pain, and his eyes quickly dimmed, as if he had lost his spirituality. Qin Mu snorted lightly, flicked his right hand, and a wisp of golden flame appeared between his fingers, emitting a dangerous and hot temperature. "Ah! Don't come over! Get out of the way!" The black shadow roared wildly, and the shrill howl resounded through the sky, piercing and sharp. "Refine!" Qin Mu shouted in a low voice, and the golden flames between his fingers flew, fell on the black shadow, and burned fiercely. In an instant, the golden flames spread to the black shadow's whole body. A piercing pain spread throughout the body, and the black shadow screamed again and again, extremely shrill. "Ah!" The black shadow struggled frantically, but unfortunately he couldn't completely break free from Qin Mu's restraints, which made the golden flames more turbulent, covering the black shadow and burning faster and faster. "You will die! You will die!" the black shadow roared. "I will not let you go. I will not forgive you." Qin Mu's eyes were calm, and he ignored the black shadow's threat. Qin Mu's mind moved, and the golden flames surged, covering the entire void in an instant, forming a huge golden furnace. "Ah!" The black shadow screamed heartbreakingly. His soul was suffering from unspeakable torment, extremely painful, as if it was about to explode. "Refine," Qin Mu said in a low voice. The golden flames became more and more violent, and the raging fire spread, almost covering the entire sky, as if the end of the world was coming. "Ah!" The black shadow's screams became more and more miserable, reaching an unprecedented level of misery, heartbreaking, shrill wailing, and horrifying. "Your Majesty! Spare my life! I am willing to surrender! I am willing to serve your Majesty! I am willing to surrender to you!" The black shadow cried and begged. Qin Mu had no expression on his face and had no mercy on this. He never believed that the black shadow would sincerely surrender to him. Moreover, even if the black shadow sincerely surrendered to Qin Mu would not dare to use the black shadow. Who knows if this guy will suddenly betray? So Qin Mu directly refined it, retained its mind, and made it his puppet. No. The hoarse roar of the black shadow became smaller and smaller, and finally quieted down, standing there quietly. Qin Mu shook his head and said indifferently, "How can you, such a dirty and ugly existence, live? It simply pollutes the air. Your Majesty, do you really want to refine this monster?" Seeing that the black shadow was refined into a puppet by Qin Mu, Lu Meng'er asked in surprise. "It is still useful to keep it? Those Qingtian Temple Supreme Elders are too stupid. They don't know that the black shadow itself is the biggest treasure." Qin Mu smiled slightly. Lu Meng'er nodded, hesitantly said, "Your Majesty, maybe, I know who that God Lord is." "Oh," Qin Mu's eyes flickered, and he said in surprise, "You know?" Lu Meng'er nodded. "Who?" Qin Mu asked. Lu Meng'er hesitated for a moment, then pointed at Qin Mu. "Your Majesty, I think that God Lord is you, Your Majesty."